There you go.
Thank you, Scott.
Any other questions? Let me know.
Thank you.
As it's 6:30, we're now going to start the meeting. If you all could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 1B, approval of the agenda.
I move that the agenda for the February 13th regular meeting be approved. Support.
Motion by Mrs. Coleman, support by Mrs. Claybaugh. Is there discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Costa, I think something that would be a good idea to add to the schedule, the agenda, would be to get a report from the resource officers and make it a standard report at every meeting.
I think
Wasn't really a motion, but
I was gonna say, it's got to be a motion.
Sorry.
So Mr. Gillespie, are you making a motion to?
I sure do. Yeah, I'd like to motion that we get a report from the resource officers and make it a standard report at every meeting.
Motion to get a standard report from the resource officer. So the motion is made by Mr. Gogolewski to get a standard report from the resource officer at, to clarify, you were at every board meeting?
Yes.
Every board meeting. So it's motion by Mr. Gogolewski to add as a discussion item. Seconded by Ms. Wandeel.
Can I ask for clarification? Yeah, are we talking about the deputies that are contracted through Livingston County Sheriff's Office for road patrol and school coverage? Or are we talking about Mike Capra, our internal security consultant?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mr. Hughes. Yeah, I'm talking about the Livingston County sheriffs that patrol the schools.
So that might be a problem from this perspective, thus I'm bringing it up for clarification. Their contract is 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., 365 days a year. And we purposely created that contract with the Livingston County Sheriff's Office to make sure that we had coverage during the school day before and after school. So I think that would be something that would have to go to the Livingston County Sheriff's Department in regards to whether or not Sheriff Murphy would even entertain overtime for those deputies.
Well, I think it's something that we should pursue.
Okay, so currently, just to clarify, because I'm just gonna add that it's our sheriff resource officer. To provide a summary, I guess, or report each meeting. Maybe Mrs. Blondell seconded that. Is there any more discussion on adding this to a discussion item to today's meeting?
I mean, to me, it sounds like there needs to be a little more research. I like the idea though, so that we can really understand what's going on in the community. Because again, we really want to help with transparency and had a long talk with Chuck about safety items today. And I think that that would be a good support for further discussions. So I'm interested in seeing how we can make this happen.
Would it make sense for a group of us and or a team of us to understand what that contract looks like and what, if we have to add to that contract and work with Mike Murphy to understand what we need to add to that contract? I believe the contract's not just solely us, but perhaps we can add an addendum that we cover as a school system. And then once we understand that verbiage, maybe bring it back.
I personally feel that I think a lot more needs to go into what the report would look like, how entailed would it be, like how much is this sheriff responsible for putting on, the deputy putting on. I mean, obviously it also helps out with Cheryl Stockwell. So my current position would be if we add this now as a discussion item, we then have to vote on it at the next meeting. And I simply am not comfortable doing that, not even knowing what this would look like. So I think it's worthy of perhaps digging into, but I personally am not comfortable adding it as a discussion item today. That's just.
I'm happy to participate in the team to dig into it.
Any other discussion? Okay, so then now we're gonna vote to.
I'm sorry, I just want to say one more thing. I feel like, you know, cost wise, if we were to look at this, it would be once a month, maybe for an hour or two.
Right.
At $56 an hour. It's not, you know, gonna be thousands of dollars, so just to put everyone's mind at ease on that, we're not asking.
No, and I think it could be, like,
Okay.
this is the first I've heard of it. I know I
Sure.
spoke to all of you this weekend and I didn't hear any of you indicate that you were gonna add this. But I'm like, I don't even know what, like Mr. Gogolewski, what are you envisioning is on this report, I guess?
Well, what I'd like to do is get a report of what they've encountered over the last month, special situations, any kind of security concerns, anything like that.
Any other discussion to add it as a discussion item? Hearing none, we'll go in order of the one that actually makes sense now. Mr. Gogolewski, to add it to today's agenda.
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw.
No.
Mrs. Coleman.
No.
Mrs. Blaylock.
I would like to bring it back. So no. But I'd like to work on it, please.
Mr. Keller.
Yes.
Ms. Blondell.
I seconded it, so I'm gonna say yes, I want to add it.
Okay. And I'm voting no, but I think it has some validity to it. I'm just not comfortable adding it right now, since we don't even know what the shape or form is. So again, I would encourage Mr. Gogolewski, since you brought this to us, to reach out to Mr. Hughes, kind of give him a layout of what you're looking at. That way we can get on the next agenda and then we'll all a little be more prepared for what is it you're envisioning. Any other discussion for approval for the agenda? Item 1B. Hearing none. Mr. Gogolewski,
I'm sorry. Can you-
we're approving tonight's agenda. Oh, yeah, I didn't hear any more discussion.
Yes.
Ms. Gillespie, yes. Ms. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mrs. Glavak?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Ms. Blondino?
Yes,
And I myself, I say yes. Motion carries. Item 1C, approval of the minutes from the January 9th, 2023 regular meeting.
I move that the minutes from the January 9th, 2023 regular meeting be approved. Support.
Motion by Mrs. Coleman, support by Mrs. Shaw. Is there any discussion about the January 9th meeting minutes?
I have a point I'd like to make regarding the call to public in the meeting minutes. Continually, we always state that members of the public address the board, and that's the only information that we have. And I think that since we made it during the last meeting that we fill out the yellow card and we go through this protocol and we make sure that we have order with people that address the board, I think we should have minutes of who was speaking and what they were speaking about. We don't do that. We never do that. In fact, I sent all of you maybe you didn't get it yet, but an email regarding meeting minutes, and I have excerpts from those meeting minutes, past ones, and there's one that really stood out, and this was from September 12th, 22. There was a note made that Superintendent Hughes postponed the visit to gymnastics until next month due to the large number of people wanting to speak at the call to public. And then just below that, call to public, members of the public address the board. So I think there's something that we can do to maybe enhance our meeting minutes and list those that speak and a brief little explanation of what they spoke about.
Any other discussion? I would to add to that, again, because I believe you sent the email about an hour and a half or a couple hours ago.
Yeah.
So I really didn't get a chance to dig through it all because it just showed up a few hours ago. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, obviously not the board here, maybe perhaps Mr. Hughes, but I thought our board minutes were to reflect the actions taken by the board. And I know, like, conveniently now we record it, so the public obviously has the opportunity to go back and listen to hear who speaks. But I thought the board agenda and the board minutes were to show what actions took place. This is not correct.
Well,
Mr. Hughes? I just
Sorry.
President Costa, board minutes are supposed to reflect what occurred at the meeting, not necessarily what was all said at the meeting. So it is supposed to reflect what occurred. So that would be actions. There was a discussion about this item. They are not intended to be all inclusive. They're just intended to say, this is what happened at this meeting. When you talk to MASB and you talk to anybody else, that's the intent of minutes. So that's why we've always done them very simplistic. Here's what happened at the meeting.
Well, I have benchmarked other districts and they happen to include little sections of minutes regarding the call to public. Some are better than others, but they do it in Howell, they do it in Brighton, they do it in Pinckney. And in fact, right locally here, the Crow-Main District Library does an exemplary job with call to public notes. And they put quite a substantial amount in their monthly meeting minutes. So we're the only ones that really don't.
I guess my question back to you, because I mean, conveniently now, and I'm so happy that we've decided to record meetings, which gives people who can't make it here an opportunity to hear. The issue, my concern, I guess, would be like if we're going to take someone's 3-minute conversation and shorten it to a sentence or for a fragment of a sentence, I would hate to misinterpret what that person that would be coming up to the call public say. So like I would be hesitant to do that because of that.
Well, that's not going to happen because the yellow card that last meeting we approved because we thought it was so important has on it an area where they can write what exactly they wish to talk about. So when they hand those cards in, we would have a record if they filled them out properly, and we could add those to our meeting minutes, and we would not have to worry about interpretation or misrepresentation.
What if they didn't, like, I have a card right here in my hand that the person didn't write down what they wish to address the board on? So would we not include their name? I would struggle taking someone's words and putting them in, like I said, to a sentence.
No,
Like I've got several cards, actually. Most of the cards don't indicate why they're addressing the board. The majority of the cards don't.
yes, but we voted last time, and these cards are very important to keep order. And I think they should be filled out completely, since that's the way we voted.
So may I make a comment? So supporting what he's saying, what Glenn's saying, is the fact that like today, I was looking through the notes and I was trying to remember what some people talked about, because I think it's important that when people do come up here and address us, whether we agree or not, we should address what they're talking about. And it kind of, I had to go back and watch it today, but if you don't go back and watch it, you don't really know what the content is. So I would think that like, it would be fairly easy in a 3-minute speech to put some bullet points on there, like, with the speaker, and then ask the public, if you're gonna put a card in, if you could be so kind as to, put the subject matter so that we can keep track of it, because we can't respond if we don't know, if we don't remember, because we won't remember everything a month later. So I'm kind of the school of thought is that we should put some little blurb in there as well. I mean.
Well, I for one, I can tell you, I take notes on brief notes on what each person says. That's what I've got my pen up here, but not ignoring people. So I think the video, and again, other board members, I just happen to be the one that's lucky enough to sit right here, it's me. I think the video encompasses a lot more than what minutes would have as far as.
I agree. I'm just saying, like, it's just something like we're approving the minutes. It's what we talked about, right? I mean, the transparency thing, I understand, like, and I feel like we maybe should take a little credit for you guys videoing, because we'd asked for it for a long time, and now that we're on the board, you're doing it, which is great. So I do feel like we had a little something to say about that. And so, little improvements, and maybe this is an improvement. Maybe somebody that's gonna come here and talk, they can speak to it, if anybody wants to give their opinion on it, But it's just extra added,
Also, too, in the bylaw 01673, item D, we state right in our bylaws, participants must first be recognized by the presiding officer and will be requested to preface their comments by an announcement of their name, address, and group affiliation if and when appropriate. So we're not doing that. We're not filling out the cards in full. I think we should follow our bylaws.
Glenn, I wholeheartedly agree that in the, 8 years or so that I've been on the board, I don't think we've ever held the public accountable for, 1, filling out the card completely, and 2, stating their address. So the bylaw you just mentioned, I think you said 01673. D. I think that would have been beneficial to us to have known prior to this current meeting, and by all means, I think we could go back and take a look at it, because again, I don't want to speak on behalf of Mr. Hughes or anyone else up here. My interpretation of the address and the phone number was, so when we have these cards and they're collected, Mr. Hughes, if some person would like Mr. Hughes to reach back out to them, he conveniently has their address and their phone number. So he could call some of these people if they said, Mr. Hughes, please reach out to me. He has it. I mean, and again, most of the people have not filled out the card entirely. A lot of them, like the date, some of them just have a first name, some of them just have a last name. So I think it's worthy of maybe going back and looking at the bylaw you said, and maybe we could remove the requirement, but I guess, again, other board members are willing to speak. I mean, if we want to force them to have their address, if we want to force them to say their address, I know some people may not want to do that. And if they don't fill it out, are we then going to hold them to the letter of the law and say, well, the card's incomplete? not fill it out, you can't speak. I mean, I think that's kind of the opposite of what we're trying to do. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, other board members that want to chime in?
Well, during the last meeting, we made it a point to state that it provides order to the meeting and it provides order to the people coming up here and speaking. And now we don't have the cards filled out and we've allowed people to speak without announcing who they are. I just think we need to follow our bylaws.
Well, like, and again, other board member, feel free to chime in. Like I said, we don't check identification at the door. We've never, and again, that bylaw clearly needs to be revisited. I've never had people state their address. I mean, one meeting we had 3 doctors in a row speak. I don't know where we would go. I do agree with you though, Glenn, that I think the bylaw that you mentioned, 1001673D, I think it needs to be revisited, because I agree. I don't think we're holding the public responsible for filling out the card in its entirety. I mean,
Yeah, we probably haven't done it for at least the last 6 years,
oh,
but
beyond that, more than that, I can assure you of that.
well,
Long before I said.
the bylaw isn't the problem there, so.
So again, I'd be open if like we wanted you, if we collectively wanted to bring this back next time and we could add it as a discussion item to what we wanted to do with this 01673D.
I think there's benefit to bringing it back, and then that way, I mean, hopefully in some of our agenda items, this will actually be posted to the public in a future. I'm getting ahead of myself here on some of these proposals, but I think that was our goal, is to be transparent, to put it out there. I think, given that there's a significant amount of people on Zoom, it's probably beneficial for people to at least state their name when they come up here, which we don't necessarily do, and it's likely hard for people to, you know, follow on Zoom and so on and so forth, and follow if we wanted to rewatch it, or if someone's rewatching it to understand. And so I think that bylaw is beneficial to bring back, and maybe bring back as a discussion item with potential either changes or not, implications of how we're gonna operationalize that in future meetings, so that then it's posted to the public, and then they have an opportunity to understand what our expectations are moving forward. Like if we were just to do it today,
I think it would be a mistake to do it today, but I agree. Like like I said, when I call a person's name, I have to assume that individual walking up. I could ask them to state their name when they arrive at the podium, but I think like you said, Mrs. Claybuck, it's worthy of bringing it back.
And the little section that asks for write your questions, concerns, or comments in the space below. Again, if that's filled out, we don't have to worry about writing down an interpretation of what the person was speaking about, and then we can add them to the minutes. So,
Like I said, I think over half of these cards, they didn't write it. And I mean.
well, do we enforce it or not?
I would be hard pressed just because the person didn't write anything to say, you can't come up and talk. Like, that's just my opinion. So other board members, again, feel free if you so.
I
want to
wasn't
add in.
saying that they couldn't come up and talk, but if they filled out the card the way we wanted them to, we would have enough information to add it to our meeting minutes.
So is this more about like somebody not filling out the cards, or the fact that like it's a policy that we're not following? And we should change that
Well,
policy to follow what we're seeing? I mean, because, what are we talking about?
Well, the last time in our meeting, I made a motion to get rid of the card.
Right, so I think
And
it's
I
more along
was
the lines of
told that
like,
it was so important to have this card to provide order. Well, we're not even filling it out correctly. We're not even following another bylaw. And, the first response is, well, let's change the bylaw. Well, I have an issue with that.
Any other discussion?
they were
I think-
helping understand. Right.
I think it's worth revisiting, but I also do still strongly feel that the card is helpful in maintaining order, regardless of any change that we make to the policy. I think it's still helpful, and I think that It's good that you're embracing the policy and that you want to enforce it. In a situation like this, however, it's not as easy to enforce it as it is just to say, this is what we expect. So I think it warrants discussion to figure out how we enforce it, because if we haven't been living up to the policy, then sure, let's address it.
Mhm. And we can easily, when we call somebody up to speak, give the card back to them, they can fill it out, they can speak. I am not stating that we should prevent anyone from speaking. That is not the point. But if we're going to have bylaws and we're going to have procedure, then let's make sure we follow our own rules.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to make a comment. Card aside, I know that's not necessarily the issue of what Glenn was bringing up, but in terms of the meeting minutes, I think I would like to see a little bit more context, even around some of the bylaws and stuff that we're voting on. And I guess maybe later on, if we vote to support the addition of the entire board packet, then maybe this all becomes moot. I guess I would.
I'm sorry to mean to cut you off. I think, yeah, that's what those action items later on would do. They would add more substance to the policy changes and the minute packet. Or the packet itself.
One of the issues that I keep on hearing from people that I speak with is that they feel that sometimes the call to public is nothing more than an exercise. In fact, in my little packet, I have a little sample from a former board member that spent 24 years on this board that posted on social media that most of the time the call to public is just political window dressing. So yeah, it's a little bit of a concern to me that we give that impression that the call to public is window dressing.
Glenn, I believe that's individual's interpretation. My interpretation of the call to the public is they have an issue that they want to address that's worthy of bringing before the board and the community and the superintendent, and thus they're here. That individual can speak in that manner, and I don't know what else to tell you. I feel if you're here at the board meeting, your topic of discussion is worthy, and with that, I don't know what else to say. So if there's no more discussion, approval of the minutes, Mr. Gillespie,
No.
Mrs. Shaw,
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman,
Yes.
Mrs. Claybaugh,
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mrs. Blondfield,
It's a tough one, but I'm gonna prove it so we can get moving on the agenda items, but I do think that there needs to be more discussion. So I will move forward and say yes.
and I myself is yes, that motion carries. Item 1D, Superintendent's report. Mr. Hughes?
Thank you. Couple things. First of all, kind of goes with your good discussion earlier. At the last call to the public, we had a young man speak about the high school and academic awards and recognition for outstanding students. I had heard from that young man and his mother prior to him coming to the podium. We had understood that. I'd worked with Mrs. Gregory. I'd shared that information with the board. And we have a process to move forward to ensure that the ideas that he had presented are in play for next year to make sure that all of that occurs. So just so the public knows, we did, and I did reach out to the family to let them know that we had done that. So that's a powerful connection that we do listen, and we do try to listen to everybody that comes up here. I make notes myself, and if I can, I reach out to those individuals to say, how can I help you with this? And a lot of times it's just people want to be heard, and if there's a way that we can listen and move something forward, we will. So certainly anytime people come to the call to the public and they would like me to contact them after the call to the public, let me know while you're at the podium, and I'll make sure that I reach out to you. So I just wanted to share that with the board that we had done that, and with the community who might have heard that conversation. Tonight, we have two presentations. I'll start with Mr. Minsker. We have an annual educational goals mid-year progress report. Dave had sent you guys earlier, and he just wants to walk through it with the public so that he has an opportunity to share what that says. Dave?
All right, thank you, Mr. Hughes. Last fall, I came to you and did a presentation of the same report, and this is just an update. So I'm going to briefly go through it and let you know kind of what's going on. But for the public's standpoint, the fall report is posted on our website. This one will be posted on our website tomorrow, so you can view it there too. But I want to make sure I go through this from beginning to end so everybody knows what's on the report. The educational goals and continuity, never say that right, learning plan, yeah, is required of all school districts in the state of Michigan under section 98B of Public Act 144, 2022. This is the same requirement I presented in the fall. And last year also, same requirements, fall, winter, and then spring, to let you know how we did as far as improvement goes through the year. As a reminder, this requirement was enacted by the state of Michigan following the pandemic, related academic impact that schools experienced in an attempt to ensure that school districts have goals related to student growth in reading and math. Part of that requirement is that districts use benchmark assessments to track growth. The following are the requirements from the state that needs to be included in the report, and I have a copy there for you that you can page through as I'm talking about it. Number one is assurances. And all these assurances are for every school in the state of Michigan. We didn't choose these. This is what they chose for us. They all have to adhere to, including a report being linked to our website, which it is, that the educational goals are linked to the district improvement goals in reading and math, and that I give this report at the February board meeting, and again at the end of the school year, and share benchmark assessments used to measure growth and achievement in reading and math. The second part are the goals, which are making improvements from beginning of the year to the end in reading and math. And that we use benchmark assessments. We use progress monitoring, diagnostic assessments to work towards increasing student achievement and growth for the three subgroups, which are all students, socioeconomic students, and special education students. And we also use the early literacy and math benchmark assessment in K2 and the smarter balanced benchmark assessment in grades 3 through 8. And these benchmark assessments are aligned to the state standards and the MSTEP state spring assessments. That's why we use those, because it's linked to all the other state assessments that we use. The next section are the progress of the goals. And the following are the things that we enacted this year. So this is what the update is. We provide reading recovery services for students in first grade that are at risk that we identify. Also reading support services for K3 students that are at risk that we identify at the beginning of the year. We provide intervention block time in K through 6 for all students to receive intervention and certain unneeded skill development in reading and math. Title I services for at-risk students in ELA in grades 5 and 6. They receive Title I services, which is an interventionist that we get through grant money, Title I grant money, to help students who are behind. ELL services, which are English language learners, the ones that struggle in the English language, we're legally bound to provide services for them. They do WIDA testing, which is the kind of test for English development, and they're screened in the fall and then identified, and then they are given a test at the end of the year, but they're provided weekly services. We provide academic intervention services K-12. Interventionists were added in all 4 elementaries in the intermediate building to provide academic supports and services to at-risk students in reading and math. Special education services K-12, full services for special education students throughout the entire year. An additional counselor was added to the Oak Creek Middle School for the 22-23 school year. We added ELA and math intervention classes, grades 7 through 8. We have instructional coaching with a focus on small group intervention work in K-12 classrooms. So to explain that a little bit, we hope that our teachers, or we do have teachers that part of their lessons every day is to provide small group or individual interventions that are built into the lessons. That's part of the intervention process that we provide. So they provide direct instruction and then provide direct intervention within the same lesson. And then we offer extended day learning opportunities at the end of the day, K-12. The reading and math benchmark assessments were given at the beginning of the school year. The levels of the achievement are based on the end of the year expectations. So the thing to remember is that students take the assessments in the fall, in the first 30 days of school. And those are based off of the end of the year requirements. So third grade students will test for what they're going to know at the end. So the scores are not usually very high because they haven't gotten that content yet. And then when we give it again at the end, that benchmark assessment, and then we measure that growth. And I'll come back to you in the spring with that data to show you where students started and where they ended up in those 3 subpopulations that I talked about. The state also requires, the next section is a statement in the report on the district's health and safety guidelines that are related to COVID. That was a requirement. And at this time, the district has not adopted any formal policies or procedures specifically addressing various CDC safety recommendations. Only the district requests that students and staff stay home if sick, and staff testing positive for COVID may return to work after day 5 if symptom-free with a mask through day 10. And that was a requirement of the report. And then the last part of it was the state requires a statement in the report on the district's mode of instruction. And in this year, Hartland provides our full scope of services, including academics, intervention, and mental health, all in person for this school year. We have to make that statement to the state. And then the state checks our transparency page where it's posted to make sure that we have posted this for the legislative requirements. This report will be posted on our transparency page tomorrow, so you can see it. Any questions?
Mr. Minsker, just out of curiosity, the term interventionist is mentioned several times throughout here. Is that intervention for academic issues, or is that intervention for behavioral issues?
Just part of it. Part of this report is for academic. It's for reading and math. This legislative requirement is specifically only for reading and math. Great.
I have a question. So, and when you're taking tests or talking about the criteria, do the students take the exact same test, or is there criteria that they have to, I mean, I'm sure it's all electronic, right?
Yep.
Do they put a certain criteria in so that they may have a different test?
No, they have the same test.
Same exact test for every student?
Yep.
Okay.
Do we understand, so I know we received an email and some of it was posted about the governor's, I guess, new budget and how that may impact schools. Do we fully understand yet how that directly impacts what we're able to do locally, or perhaps is that something that we maybe identify closer to the end of the year?
Chuck, I may help with that one because you're more in tune with that than I am.
Well, first of all, what the governor has proposed has a long way to go before implementation. It's got to go through the Senate, it's got to go through the House. So until we get to the end, we hope to have a budget by the end of the year so we can do our budget. But as we all know in public education, often they don't get to, that doesn't get taken care of until sometimes in the summer, and sometimes, in worst case scenario, until October. So we're hoping that they can work together and create the budget, and then we'll answer some of those questions. But right now, while she has those as recommendations, right now, there's really no reason for us to even think which way would we go, because we don't know that that'll get through.
And in some of those respects, some of them, there was quite a bit of dollars behind, for instance, like school safety. Is that something that is kind of automated to us if it passes? Or is that something that we then have to apply for to cover additional safety measures beyond the two Livingston County sheriffs that we currently have? Or, and it's okay if we don't have answers today, obviously, but would like to better understand how that directly correlates, to what we were able to garner.
Well, again, an answer to that is, I don't know all the answers. I'll give you an example. For instance, there's a line item in there for rural schools or busing, right? And you would think, in a school district that bus is 93 square miles, and you look at an inequity in public education just from the standpoint of what does it cost Hartland to transport children to school versus a district like, let's say Livonia, just pick one out of the air, that may only have to bus very few students because it's very suburban urbanized. Their costs of transportation are much smaller than ours. And yet we may not be able to capture any of those dollars because we don't fit the formula. So there's sometimes formulas, sometimes applications, sometimes it's only going to the school districts that have the highest population of socioeconomic at-risk students. So until they actually put it out and we know what the categoricals are and who qualifies, I can't answer that. Hope that makes sense.
I have another question. So, when you put in, or you say that there's, extended day learning, special services, things like that. Do we have a cost associated with this that we recognize, or is this something that you fit in the current budget? Or is that something?
It depends on what it is. We have some things that are in the current budget and some that are not. The extended day was grant money. That was paid for by grant. Which grant specifically was that?
It's part of the American Rescue Plan, ESSER grants that pay for our after-school interventions.
Instructional coaching, there's some of it as our budget, some of it is LASA county money. There's a lot of different pots that it all comes from.
So when you go to put in for something like that, you exhaust all the avenues to see if there's a grant or if there's, the county will pay for something like this is that done in the finance committee meetings, or is that something that you do? Because I would just be curious of that process.
That's something that we discuss on what we want to spend that money on. And usually it's people, that those are the more staff is more support, smaller groups, more intervention, better intervention.
So you may have hired somebody to help with these interventions. Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
I was just gonna say thank you, Mr. Metzger, for putting this together for us. And I mean, obviously, we're only mid-year, but I do look forward to seeing how well our students come through the fall to the spring.
We're working hard to make sure our kids are moving, and
I look forward to it.
me too.
Thank you, Dave. Next up, I have Rachel here. Rachel's going to do a presentation on non-homestead because that's coming up. There will be a big spread in the next community life. And Rachel and I will begin meeting with all the PTOs in the district to talk to the PTO about the non-homestead coming up, and we'll be getting the word out. So Rachel.
Oh, that is, can't see my notes, Chris. All right, so good evening, everyone. I know we had some conversation last board meeting. We started talking about our non-homestead election coming up here in May. Thought it would be helpful to give this presentation tonight to give you guys some more information, also give the public some more information on exactly what it is and why we need to do it and why it is important for us. So first of all, what is it? Non-homestead millage is a tax on non-homestead properties. Those are your properties that are commercial buildings, industrial buildings, apartment buildings, rental homes, if you have a vacation home, that sort of thing. This is not something unique to Hartland. This is okay. So this is every district in the state of Michigan is required to levy these 18 mills on the non-homestead properties in order to receive our full funding from the state. And to back up just a little bit, districts are funded on a per pupil basis. And every year the state determines what that amount is going to be. So for this year, we're at $9,150 per student. However, the state doesn't send us that whole $9,150 a student. What happens is we collect these 18 mills locally. For us, that's about $5.5 million. And then the rest comes in the form of the foundation allowance from the state. So if you just want to put some quick numbers to it, if you take this $9,150 per student multiplied by our approximately 5,100 students, you get about $47 million in total. This $5.5 million for this 18 mills comes from this local non-homestead millage, and then the remainder, the other 42 million comes from the state. So that's how that all works. If this sounds familiar, it's nothing new. This has been around for a while. The last time we brought this to our voters was in May 2018. And really prior to that, this has been around since Proposal A passed way back in the early 90s. Which is when they completely revamped how schools were funded and shifted a lot of that funding mechanism from the local districts to the state. And so part of Proposal 8 requires that we take this to our voters periodically. And so while this has no impact, if the only property you own in the state of Michigan or in Hartland rather is your primary residence, this millage has no impact on you, but you do have the ability to cast your vote. So what does the ballot look like? I will not go through and read all this language, but if you get your ballot and you're reading this for the first time and you don't really know what this is talking about, it's a lot of words and I know it can get kind of confusing and pretty overwhelming, but in a nutshell, what it's asking our voters to do is to renew and restore those 18 mills on non-homestead properties and all of this language. So you might notice that the ballot does say to renew the 17.8939 mills and increase by 0.1061 mills. And why is that? Why does it say something about an increase? And really that is due to this Headley rollback provision in the state constitution. And really what that says is that taxable values cannot increase more than the rate of inflation. And so every year the county does a calculation for us and it determines if we are going to have a rollback in that year. And here in Hartland, we've been subject to 2 in the past 5 years. And so therefore, what that does is it ticks back our millage just a little bit. And so we right now cannot levy that full 18 mills. And so what's happening is we are losing about $30,000 annually because we cannot levy that full 18. And so that's what we are, we're asking our voters to restore us back up to the full 18 mills. And it's also important to note that the state's not making up that $30,000 annually. They are assuming we're collecting that full 18 mills here locally. So what happens if it doesn't pass? So I mentioned earlier that $5.5 million is essentially what this 18 mills generates. And again, the state does not make this up. They're assuming that we are collecting it. And so we cannot make up these funds from another source. So therefore, this would be very devastating for our general fund budget to lose this funding annually. And therefore, we'd be forced to make some really difficult decisions on staffing and programming to offset that loss in revenue. And so it's also important to note, as I mentioned earlier, that if the only property you own is a home, if this millage doesn't pass, you wouldn't see a reduction in your property taxes. Just like if it does pass, you would not see an increase in your property taxes. Again, zero effect on your average residential homeowner. So I hope that helps clarify a few things for everybody, help explain why this is so very important for us. We do have this information and more on our website. If you go to heartlandschools.us, there is a banner there that will take you to a link right to the webpage dedicated to all the information on this millage. As always, we encourage anyone to contact Mr. Hughes or myself, either phone call or email. We really want people to understand this and want our voters to have all the information they need in order to vote in May.
Rachel, I just want to add, I know that you talked about it not having an impact if your sole residence is your home. But the impact is, the reason why we want to bring it to the voters and make sure everybody knows about it is we still need you to get out and vote, because it's all the voters in Hartland, in the Hartland School District, that have an option to say yes or no to this particular operational, some people call it operational millage, not homestead. So if you don't get out and vote, and you were hoping it would go one way or the other, and it doesn't, well, it's because you didn't vote, right? So we do need people to get out and vote. It is important that you vote on the non-homestead because it does affect us down the road if it doesn't pass.
I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Thanks for the presentation. I have a quick question. So Sounds like the majority of people are not impacted by the increase, is that correct?
I don't have the exact makeup of how many people have just primary homes in the district, but we are what's considered a bedroom community, which means that a majority of our rooftops are homes. So while I can't give you exact numbers, I think that would be a fair assumption.
So something greater than 50%?
Yes.
Second question I have is there a difference between what we're collecting from actual appreciation of a home and how much that is offset by the Headley Amendment? So are we still netting positive because a home is appreciating more than what we roll back due to inflation?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you saying that? I guess I'm not sure if I
So-
understand.
No, so I guess the millage is what, 17.89 something,
Mhm.
right? So that number is a bigger number because of appreciation of the property that person may own, right? So that property becomes worth more every year, potentially, hopefully.
Well,
So
the number
what's
is.
The difference between what that 1789 gets rolled back each year versus how much income we bring in due to the fact that that property is now worth more money than it was 1 year ago.
Well, there's more to the overall calculation. They call it the millage reduction fraction, is the calculation that's done at the county level. And it's looking at property values as a whole and taking different things into account. There's, what they consider additions and losses and changes in types of properties that are switching from, principal residence exemption to non-principal residence exception. And all that is factored into the calculation on what is then applied to the current year millage. So our current millage at 18 mills is what's getting ticked back a little bit every year because of this calculation that's done based on property values at the county level. So I don't know if that helps a little bit, or
We can talk.
okay, yeah, I'm sorry, it's just not, it's not computing unless, am I missing?
I have a question. So if it doesn't pass this election, when is the next time it's up? In 2 years? So it's every 2 years or?
No, so this expires with our 2023 levy.
I understand, but if it doesn't pass, then the next time you can bring it to the public to vote on. So we'd be under budget, or we'd be 2 years in arrears from
yeah,
this.
Right, so we would have to take it then, I believe August would be the next opportunity we would have. And then we would have a chance to apply it to the 2024 levy. However, you have to use a little bit different language in that case. Because we're doing it at this time, we can say that we're going to renew the 17.89 and just increase by that 0.1061. But since our current levy is set to expire with 2023, our ballot language would have to say increase 18 mills. And it's just a function of, how the law is written and how the ballot has to work.
Gotcha.
And so it's easier to read, I guess, and easier to accept when you're seeing something like renew versus increase 18 mills, even though, again, this really doesn't have much impact on a typical
Yeah, I see
residential
what you're saying.
homeowner.
It's
Yeah,
kind of semantics, right? Like 18 million versus.
Right,
yeah, I
right.
get it.
right. And even, you might have some voters that come and not know what it's about and say, I don't want my tax to go up 18 mills, and mark no, even though they don't realize it doesn't affect them.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
If there's no other questions for Rachel,
Good.
thank you, Rachel.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
We'll take the road show out there and get the word out as well. So ends the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hughes. Thank you, Rachel and Mr. Metzger. Item 1E, call of the public. I do have several cards. First card I have. Fry.
get the ball rolling tonight. So I feel that last meeting and this one has been a little bit rough so far. Let's hope that we can do better going forward, at least in a more professional manner. I'm kind of disappointed in both our new members and the lack of decorum as well as their supporters. I don't know if anybody realizes that I got hissed at by a 70-year-old man at the last meeting. Do better, Hartland. I want to point out that numerous points last meeting, Ms. Blondie couldn't stop making faces, rolling eyes, and giggling with her friend in the audience. I'd like to remind you as an elected official, and you are on camera, and you are to comport yourself as such. I also want to note the indignance in which Ms. Blondie spoke about having to work over the weekend. I understand this is not a paid position, but why campaign to do a job that you're not prepared to do? Does everyone here realize that our teachers already work all weekend? Quick note for incumbent members that are sincerely attempting to work with any demands being made. I do give you credit for making concessions that are reasonable, but I'm here mainly today to talk about your objection to SEL, Ms. Blondie. You asked, and I quote, you said it's not natural for every
Sorry,
human being.
I don't like to interrupt you. I'll extend your time, but I am gonna ask that you try to direct your comments to the board. And I know you specifically are saying like
Okay.
one board member.
Sure.
But I'll give you the extra time because I've interrupted you.
Okay, there was an objection made last meeting that quote is, it's not natural for every human being to like all human beings. And there was a requested examples of our experiences with SEL. I would like to provide one specific example on what SEL has done for my family. My oldest is special needs, and he has a fight with what he described as his arch nemesis, which is another child his age. SEL did not tell him that they needed to be friends as what was implied, but instead that it's possible to not be friends with someone and still give them the respect they deserve as another human. Let me repeat that. It is possible to not be friends with or agree with others, but it's also not right to be a bully. Also, it was said last meeting that rainbow stickers make children who don't identify not welcome, and I have to remark that this is just about one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. I don't identify. I grew up in a religious household, and I never felt excluded by knowing that a business or a public space is welcoming to all. I think it speaks volumes about what kind of bigotry taught in your home if your child truly feels uncomfy at the sight of a rainbow. Your precious babes are going to have a real rough go out there in the real world. I've worked in larger cities and had gay bosses and trans clients. What do you propose your child does in that situation? The fact is, your child's comfort may come at the price of another child's life. Gay and trans kids are the largest demographic of teenage and young adult suicide. The Trevor Project estimates that over 1.8 million LGBTQ youth from ages 13 to 24 seriously consider suicide each year in the US, and at least one attempts suicide every 45 seconds. Listen, everyone, I graduated in the 90s. I personally know about losing classmates because their family would have never supported them. Kids like your kids that came from households like your household. To paraphrase my new bestie, graduation or funeral, which one will you attend? Go class of 2040.
The next card I have, Ella Nikitin. Sorry, Ella. Students can say I don't pronounce a lot of their names correctly.
Yeah, I mean, at least you didn't say nicotine. That would be so much worse. Hi, I'm Ella. I graduated from Hartland 4 years ago. I really, really don't want to come down here. You know, I have like 5 classes in college now. I don't have time for this, but recent events have made it that I have to pay attention. You know, one of the board members here made the comment that he was very proud of the increased engagement here. I don't think it's right to be proud that, metaphorically speaking, people are looking at you because you're throwing metaphorical excrement around. I think we can do better. Okay. As your Mr. Gokoleski needs to be a little bit less combative with the rest of the board. A little bit nicer. It is possible. You know, it's like he's like taking every opportunity to bring up every possible thing he can to stir things around. Like he was bringing up concerns about people not having to say their names and address when speaking to the public. I want to say I would not feel comfortable having to give out my address here. While I was sitting here in the back, someone was like pointing a camera at me. I don't want that person to know where I live. I do not feel safe with that. So as your local transgender furry cat girl, I want you to do better, please.
George Sandy? Oh, sorry, George.
I hope everybody's doing well, and thank you for giving me a chance to talk. Starting what Lynn was saying, my apology, because one of those cards was my name and I didn't put any more explanation for what I'm going to talk. And if you guys are going to do it this way, I'm fine, that if it's not an explanation and it's nothing that people want to explain, we can just disqualify the person from talking. You have a rule, you have the bylaw, do it. I don't have any issue with that, but one of them was mine, and it's my apology. Going back in October last year, was a gentleman here. He was a businessman from Hartland, and he hired a couple of students that finished the high school in Hartland, and he was complaining about those kids can't even measure with a tape measure. They don't know how to use the traction, and they don't know how to use the geometry rules, and they can't do anything. And I'm not wondering about this one. I usually travel a lot in Europe, and I'm bringing here 2 books of math, middle school, 7th grade and 8th grade. Exercise book for math in the 2nd grade. What the kids are learning in 2nd grade, in 7th and 8th grades over there in Europe, this is what we get, our kids get. Besides, they don't have any books. This is what they get from the teachers. And what they are learning over there in Europe in 7th and 8th grades, they are learning in 2nd grade high school. Sophomores are learning this one. My question is, what is so difficult? Why is so difficult for every class? We can have a book, and every book have the exercise. And at the top of this one, based on what is the curriculum study done, that our kids in Hartland learning in sophomore grade, what the kids in Europe learning in 7th or 8th grades. I'm a mechanical engineer and I'm being exposed to a lot of math. I'll put myself available, whoever is in charge for curriculum for schools in Hartland, and I can help volunteer and do the best that I can. Whoever is interested, I can share those books, and the people that are understand math. It doesn't matter what kind of language it's. The equation is equation, and you know how to solve the equation, or geometry is the geometry. The triangle is the same in all countries. This is what I was going to offer my help, and please keep me in mind, if you guys are looking for help in doing this in the future, I'll be more than happy to help you guys. I can get a lot of information from different countries. I can get information from Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Albania, Croatia, and other places.
Thank you. I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap things up.
Hmm?
I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap things up. Thank you.
So, thank you very much.
Emma Flake.
Hi, I am an alumni of the class of 2018, and it's really interesting. I just realized I'm really old, as it's 11 years ago. I kind of came here as a school of choice student. I hear stories of parents and grandparents and like all the fun, older, not to tell you that you're old, but the fun 90s stories and the fun 80s stories and the 70s and the drive-ins and skipping class. But it's interesting because it's not what I experienced at some points. I'm grateful for the educators that I was offered, because I could not imagine doing anything that they did during COVID. But what's interesting to me is what's happening now. A lot of suicide rates are increasing. Teachers are exhausted. And what is happening in between? We become so engaged with satisfying the 2% of students that don't feel accepted. As a regular kid, we change the whole environment to be uncomfortable for the 98% that matter. Teachers are frustrated, movies become routine, grades are a necessary tool to just move on. We were a check the box, good teachers became indifferent, some moved on to other professions, and today substitute teachers aren't even accredited nor have background checks. Even today, I read the safety policies and I have to laugh because the difference between written words and practices is interesting. As I begin to even contemplate coming into a public school system with kids in the future, I'm not sure if I would do it. I just would love to see us go out of the way for our teachers, as they're the ones spending the most time with our kids. 8 hours, they give the most influence in a week. A lot of parents work 40-hour weeks. They don't see their kids as much as an educator does. So why aren't we catering to them and giving lump sums of money and a teacher only a value of $40,000 or less? Thank you.
Len Patillo.
Hi, this is in regards to the safe space signs and rainbow flags in the classroom. I've been asking Kate Gregory and Tom Urich to stop discriminating against my kids for over 18 months now. They've done nothing. 9 students, including my daughter, met with Kate and Tom in October. They felt discriminated against. They provided them with 3 proposals, any of which would have ended the discrimination against straight students. Kate and Tom did nothing. They told the students they would meet with them before the holiday break with an answer. They never followed through. I met with Chuck Hughes on December 21st. We had a good conversation and I thought we had made some progress towards a solution. But in a follow-up email, he said he was going to wait till March, the March DEI meeting, to discuss it and not to expect any change. So Chuck, Kate, and Tom continue with their discrimination and continue to kick the can down the road. If this were discrimination against an LGBTQ student, I can assure you they wouldn't wait 2 months. But because it's discrimination against straight students, they think it's okay. Chuck, Kate, and Tom are breaking federal and state laws by allowing sexual discrimination against my kids. But what really gets me is the 3R policy. It's right there on the wall behind you. It's drilled into students from the time they enter kindergarten, which is good. I agree with that policy. I'm in full support of it. But what I also support is everyone being held to the same standard. The policy said it applies to all students, and we will not accept discrimination in any form. So why do the three of you think that it applies to you? Chuck has described the safe space teachers as counselors. In my meeting with Chuck on December 21st, I expressed my concern with students being directed to safe space teachers when they have no counseling experience. Students that approach a teacher are already struggling with issues. What happens when that teacher says the wrong thing and something happens to the student or to someone else? Chuck said that he would hope the teacher would direct the student to the counseling office. Chuck, hope is not a strategy when it comes to safety of our students. As a superintendent, you shouldn't have to be told that. Chuck also said he was sending Kate around to find where all these safe space signs are located. Hang on to that info, Chuck, because I'm going to FOIA the locations of them signs and the credentials of all the teachers that have them hung. Per Chuck, these signs were never authorized by the district to be hung in the schools. I think what we are going to find when we get that information is a long list of teachers and not a one of them having a lick of experience in counseling. This is an issue. To the board, Chuck's current approach is putting the district in legal jeopardy. In the state of Michigan, there are requirements for doing counseling work in the school setting. It is my intent to file a complaint with the state, so there will be a record of this, that this was brought to you guys' attention. The board needs to start providing some oversight to how Chuck Hughes, Kate Gregory, and Tom Urich are operating. The last 6 months have seen several of their woke policies exposed. When I met with Chuck, he took credit. Okay, one more sentence. When I met with Chuck, he took credit for stopping 2 of these, the book and the use of personal pronouns. Chuck, I don't give you any credit at all. You didn't step up until you were caught. The district doesn't want your woke agenda, and it's time to get back to the basics and start treating all students fairly as required by law. That's what you're hired to do.
Brooke?
You know, we're all worried about these yellow cards. I'm gonna just start there. If only we could all focus on safety the way we're focusing on all this other stuff. My name's Brooke Chapel, and yes, I did put a post out there saying graduation or funeral, and how every single one of you up here determine that what future are our kids gonna have. And it's a big deal, you see, because we all love our kids and we send them into you and we want to believe that they're safe. But at the end of the day, I have a question. And this is not one of these where we can do one side agrees and the other side can come up with different facts. This is an exercise for everyone out here. If you don't believe what I'm saying, I want you to call up all your schools right now in our county. And I'd like you to find out the type of security they have in their schools. How is it possible that even the lowest school, which is Fowlerville, by the way, they have one dedicated resource officer for 2,332 students as of count day last Thursday. So we have that. Yet in our town, everyone, pay attention. We supposedly have 2 contracted officers, which yes, in theory we do. 1 full-time officer, and then when he's not working, we have the other one. But the difference is, this officer is in charge of 15,500 people. How's that possible? So either he's Superman, that's incredible, we're probably getting a discount. If not, how is it, why do we see Brighton? Brighton has an officer in every one of their schools. Fowlerville has an officer in every one of their schools. And they have so many that they actually have like somebody looking out over all their security. I'm sorry, in the beginning, I may have said Fowlerville was Pinckney, that has 2,332 students with one resource officer. So how is it possible? What's going on that we don't know about out here? Because to me, what I see is I'm a parent who now, I have 4 children in this district, 3 separate schools, and 2 of my children's schools are under attack. Gun threats, they become the new normal. And suddenly, all of you up here are going to assess whether that's a real threat or not. So-and-so is having a bad day. Oh, maybe he didn't say that. Maybe he didn't mean when he said he was going to rape the girls in the bathroom. Maybe he was just kidding. How is it possible that you all get to decide that? Wouldn't it make sense if we had an actual security officer in every building that, so when we had these students, first and foremost, that these kids wouldn't have to worry about all of you. They'd be worried about what's going to happen. Because what we don't do is we have these babysitters. They're called handlers. We bring them in and it's fun. So we bring these handlers in.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I do need you to wrap this up.
I'm going to wrap it up. How do we spend all this money on handlers? They can't do anything. Not one thing. They can't put their hands on our children. They can't defend the other kids. So you're going to let our children each and every day have to go to school with someone who's bullying them. That's right, I said it, bullying. We're not supposed to talk about that. But it's what we deal with each and every day. So tell me, how are you all not bullies up here? I'm serious. I don't want to say that and I don't say it lightly.
I'm sorry, Brooke, I let you go well beyond the 3 minutes after Brad. I have to ask you, so if you have one final thing to say.
Certainly, I do have one last thing. I'm starting a parent group for anybody who wants to get involved, and let's take some actual action to get things happening.
Robinson.
Good evening. My name is Connie Robinson. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I would like to applaud Brooke because I think what she just talked about is probably should be at the top of our priority list for our kids in the schools. I did not get to speak last time, and so I'd like to reiterate what Minnie said, and that is welcome to all the new people. It's refreshing to see new faces. And it is also refreshing to hear talk and see action regarding transparency. I think it's very important. I think that I'm very glad that we're recording these meetings now. And I think that anything that we can do to enhance transparency is always going to be a good thing. So that brings me to the call to public. Last time, Ms. Glayback said that she looked at, I believe, 12 different schools, and that they all, I believe she said they all use cards, and that some of them, in fact, some of them required pre-registration. I think she said a couple of them did. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. As far as using the cards, I mean, I don't know how you don't use cards. I think it just would be chaotic without cards. My major complaint is, and I've been to every single school board, not every single school board meeting, but every single school in the district to their school board meetings, as well as up in Lansing, State Board of Ed meetings. And not one requires you to have your card in by 6:30 or prior to the start of the meeting. in Fowlerville, in Howell, and in Brighton, as long as you're there, while the call to public meeting is still going on, you are able to submit your card. And I would suggest that you, would hope that you could look seriously at that. I think that, you know, some people really struggled to get here and to get that in prior to the start of the meeting. And also some people, as they're hearing others talk, would like to add on, or it prompts them with an idea that they'd like to speak about. And as long as the call in the public is going on, I think people should be allowed to speak. That way no one is disenfranchised. As far as filling out the card, if you have to have it done prior to the start of the meeting, that's not going to happen, because a lot of times people are racing in, they get their name, their date, and they run it up. So
Mrs. Robinson, I have to ask you to wrap things up.
oh, okay. And I would not like to see the bylaws. I would like to see the bylaws changed if it includes address, because I don't think it's a great idea for people to give their address. And one more quick thing, as far as the explosion of trans and gender dysphoria and suicide, it has exploded in the last five years or so. And that's partly because of social media, because it's been pushed in the schools and it's become a social contagion. And that should be addressed. Thank you.
Let's start Sally Krug Shaper.
Mr. Costa, before we begin, just a point of order here. Can we ensure that the speakers up here are not heckled by anyone?
You know, Mr. Gogolski, I can encourage I actually did not read, sorry.
You're fine.
I did not read the expectations for the people presenting. To be honest, I guess, I'm just looking at what it says as far as call to the public. It would be wonderful if you're correct, Mr. Gogolski, if our audience could maintain the one speaker mentioned, the 3 Rs during the call to public. But beyond like yelling over, I will try to attempt to shush people, but I know that we have people that clap for sometimes. I hear some people booing. I would encourage, again, like our one speaker represented, it came up and talked about the 3 Rs. It'd be wonderful for the audience to use that. So I will make every attempt if I hear an attempt to speak over them. Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. My name is Sally, like you said. I'm a mom of 3 daughters that have gone through the Hartland schools, preschool all the way through. I have 2 in college and 1 still in high school. And I'm not a fan of public speaking at all, but it's important to come to the board meetings and speak, because if the quieter voices don't speak, the louder voices are the only ones you hear. And I appreciate Hartland Schools. I appreciate all of the administration, the board, my kids' teachers. When my oldest was a kindergartner, she was extremely intelligent, but very shy. She could have been pushed to the side. She could have been forgotten. But because of the SEL, which isn't what they called it then, she's 21 years old, but her teacher found her a place in their classroom. She encouraged her to be a helper, a leader, someone other kids could go to, and she encouraged other kids to treat her that way too. And so that is a way that SEL is super important for all the kids, both the kids who got help from my daughter and who learned something they might not have known without her help, and my daughter who found a place and has become a successful adult. So, you know, I'm not a teacher, I'm a scientist, and I'm not in my kids' classrooms every day. I volunteered when they were in elementary, and I did like photocopying and cutting things out, because the purpose of a volunteer is to help the teacher and not to take over the teaching, because that's not what I'm trained to do. So I appreciate Hartland Schools and all that they've done for all of my kids and for all of my kids' friends. And I just hope that y'all know that you are appreciated and continue to do the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Barbara Tonkovich.
My name is Barbara Tomkovich. I live in Genoa Township, and thank you for letting me come up and speak. I indicated education, but again, as Connie was, Robinson was saying, when people start talking, other ideas don't get old, tend to come into your mind. I've spoken before, and basically, one thing that came to my mind was when we said the Pledge of Allegiance. One nation under God, and then we started the meeting. Even in the federal government, they say a prayer and invoke God's blessing and wisdom. And I feel it very important that this is done at a meeting. And I'm just going to quickly shoot up a prayer to Father God that this board and the people within my voice that are hearing this, that Father God, you would reach out to them by your Holy Spirit, convict them of the sins, the rebellion that they have against you, God, who's the creator of the universe. And you are merciful and loving, but you do judge because you are righteous. In Jesus' name. Now, the other thing I wanted to say was that education, which was my comment originally, education originally began with the family, the parents. The mother in particular are to nurture the children, not to turn them over to teachers that are going to instill their ideas. If a family unit, no matter what people want to believe, God will hold them accountable for what they teach their children and what happens. But they need to be responsible for their own children. And we're in a society where it takes two people to work. Things have just gotten really crazy. But if you put God first and truly follow him, he will find a way and you won't have these problems. And my other comment is the fact that we need the 10 Commandments back. We're talking about security. We used to have, up until the 60s, we used to have the 10 Commandments in public, not just the courthouse, they were in the schoolrooms. And the morning would start with a pledge and invoking God's blessing on the children and the teachers. What a change there would be in this country. And we need to get, people would know, do not kill.
I don't mean to interrupt, but you.
I'm sorry. But I encourage the 10 Commandments to be brought back in. See you next month. God bless. Some items.
I always thought the call to public was kind of strange because I'm talking, to all of you, but I'm talking to you too. So it's like I want to stand on the state side, but nevertheless, my name is Kim Evans. I live on Shinnecock in Brighton Township. If you want to come by and help pull weeds this spring, come on over. I don't know. Anyways, one of the things I wanted to introduce myself. Some of you know me, but my name is Kim Evans. And I am a third generation educator. My daughter is studying right now and she'll be the fourth. I retired from Hartland High School, or Hartland Schools, taught there for 20 plus years. While I was there, I was thinking today, I'm like, I kind of did a lot of things while I was there. I was part of the our accreditation committee. I was class sponsor a couple times. I was the National Honor Society advisor for 20 plus years. I'm sure there's more stuff if I think about it. But the reason I want to introduce myself is I want you to understand that I know school. Okay, I know school from the bottom to the top, from the kindergarten teacher to the 5th grade teacher to the SXI parapro. I know what makes an effective school. I know what makes an effective teacher. Some of you administrators here were administrators in the building when I worked. And I would say you would be hard pressed to find a time when I ever sent a kid to the office. Because my attitude was, I'm in charge. I don't send them down there for Mr. Minsker to tell them what to do. They have to deal with me. Okay. But also, I think that it's important that we focus on, start with the things that we can agree on. And I have to say, Mr. Costa, Mr. Gogolewski, you stole my thunder. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the 3 R's. And you've talked about it tonight. And honestly, I remember when I was at the high school, and I think Mr. Hughes, you were principal, he had to put on all the athletic uniforms. I think it's in the floor at the high school in the gym. Okay. The 3 R's, reason, respect, and responsibility, are pervasive and intrinsic in Hartland schools. There's not a classroom that doesn't have that poster. There's not a classroom that doesn't follow those beliefs. Like I said, I think it's important that we think about where we can agree. I think everyone in this room will agree that parents are their children's first and most important teacher. Okay? You don't have to agree, but I think you do. Okay? And I think that as children, we teach our children manners. Okay? We teach them how we expect them to behave. I think something else that we could probably all agree on in here is that children do as we do, not as we say. The reason, respect, and responsibility. In the classroom, we teach children. You're responsible for what you say and do. Think with reason. We tell children to treat each other with respect. You can't grab something from someone else just because you want it.
Sorry, Ms. Evans, I'm gonna have to ask you to just
Gotcha.
wrap things up here.
Okay. And you have responsibility for what you do. I have to say I was incredibly appalled at the meeting when I came in January about what I was called crosstalk in the classroom. When people talk under their breath, they talk while others are talking, and they make comments, positive, negative, I don't care. But I have to say, as parents, if you do those things, you're allowing your children to do those things. And if they do those things in the classroom, there will be consequences. And I challenge you as the board to set that tone. Anybody here you know, tell them that that is unacceptable. The cat calls, the noises, all of those things.
I'm sorry, Ms. Evans, I'd let you go well beyond. I have to ask you to wrap it up.
Gotcha.
Sorry, thanks.
Thanks.
Final card, Katie Schluter. Oh, gotta get better. Schluter.
My mother-in-law used to say salute her would be a way to do it, but it's always a little embarrassing to say that, so I don't. I came here today because last month's meeting just left me feeling very disheartened, and I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the positive things that I've seen as a parent in Hartland schools. My son is a sophomore. He's my youngest child of 5. So I think I've told you guys before that it's over 200 classrooms that my kids have been in. And he had stepped up his curriculum with our support, started to take more AP, more honors courses, even a chamber choir, which is advanced music. And he was starting to feel the pressure. And my husband said, get in there and get some conferences going. And I said, it's the wrong time of year. It's just before Christmas. Teachers are really busy. This isn't a good time for them. I'll just email. And he said, no, make the calls, try to do it. So I emailed all his teachers, and the response was amazing. I mean, I want to name these teachers by name. And if I had more than 3 minutes, if I had 3 hours, I could give you so many teachers throughout the years and counselors that have called our home and have met with us and have worked with our children throughout our 20 years with the school district. But I am afraid in this climate to even call them out by name, even though they did wonderful things, because I don't want them to have a target on their back. I want no, they're just trying to keep their heads down and get things done in a very difficult political climate that is not their fault. So I'm just going to say that his physics teacher responded to his request for more structure on some assignments that were due at the end of each unit and provided the kids with checks on their homework throughout the week so that some of the kids that need more structure could keep pace. His calc teacher not only helped us with course planning for the future and working with him on tips, that physics teacher also gave us some outside resources for him to study. The calc teacher, upon learning that he was having a hard time finding a quiet place to study after school and before drama, offered his classroom for my kid to just sit there and get his work done. His English teacher, I want to cry, offered to meet with him before school to help him to get his planner together so he could plan out the week, next week, based on this week. And he offered to do that every single week. I misdirected the email to his social studies teacher, but she met me in the hall and she updated me on how he was doing. And she told me about the other opportunities for advanced work and social studies. His choir teacher met with me for 45 minutes and it was so obvious that she just wasn't concerned with his performance in her class, but in his well-being and how what were his plans for the future and how was he balancing everything.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to ask you to just wrap
I
up
just
real
want to
quick. Sorry,
say
yeah.
that this is not the actions of indoctrination by a woke mob. This is the actions of excellent teachers just doing their job. And his counselor called me personally when I asked about a certain career path. That's not the first time she called me to counsel me. I'm just saying that the political rhetoric that filters down to the teachers has a chilling effect, and we have a teacher shortage. We have got to calm things down. There are elements in our society that are very happy to defund the schools, and they're not above, I know, they're not above stoking anger in parents to get that done. Two more things I just have to say, that if the high school is interested in doing award ceremony like they used to, I would be more than happy to help in any way, any
Thank you.
capacity that I can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So on call of the public, item 1F, board reports and requests. Mr. Still in order of our normal voting here, so Mr. Gogolewski, start with you on the end.
Thank you, Mr. Casa. I sent to all board members a sort of a template that could be used for, let's say, the evaluation of some of our safety drills. And I really haven't had any feedback on that. I was surprised to learn that we really don't record or have any kind of written record of how well our drills have gone on in the school. And I think that's something that we could work on. And I know, Mr. Costa, we had this talk about trying to improve how we can better the safety drills that we do, providing some sort of mechanism to record how well they're carried out, was everything accomplished, that sort of thing. And I think that's something that we should definitely look into later.
Mr. Gogolewski. Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. My microphone is not working, so Krista and I are sharing. I have a few things. First of all, I'd like to thank the administration and Renee for getting our board packet to us on Wednesday. Thank you for meeting that expectation, so we all had enough time to do our due diligence, ask questions, look through the board packet. The second thing is something was shared with me today. One of the secretaries at Round has a kindergarten student who asked her to change the bulletin board in the office to include rainbows and more words. So the words she chose were spread love everywhere you go. Let no one ever come to you without leaving happier. And I thought that was a great message I wanted to share with everyone. The last thing I will say is I am open to discussing any policy, any item, adding anything to the agenda. However, when we receive things a few hours before board meetings, I haven't had a chance to think about it, talk to all of you, call Chuck with questions. I'm happy to, entertain adding those things that we talked about earlier to the agendas in the future as discussion items, but we have, pretty full agenda already today. And again, I just want to make it clear, I'm not opposed to talking about anything, revising anything. But I think that we need more time to do that before we sit at the board table.
Thank you, Mrs. Shaw. Mrs. Coleman?
I don't really have too much, but I did want to thank Mr. Reck for some great unified basketball games this season. Those games, that's the biggest warm fuzzy you can ever get from a sporting event. It's great. Community building. It's really endearing. And it's just a great experience to go every time I was able to make it to a couple games this season. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mrs. Coleman. Mrs. Blaylock?
Really quickly, just want to make sure everyone knows that the Hartland Optimist Youth Appreciation Night is happening in March 21st. And so we are accepting nominations for kids who are doing pretty stellar things throughout our community, whether that be volunteering, whether that be them doing something in the church, within the community, mentoring, kind of the whole full gamut of K through 12. And Hartland Living has posted it. We have posted it. I believe it's been in a couple of Chuck's updates. Feel free to reach out to me directly if you need the form. It's a really awesome night where we're able to honor kids who are doing great things in the community. And we do read their stories, each of their stories as to why they're getting the award. So that's pretty cool. It enables them to feel very valued for what they're doing. I do have a lot of other items, but it is part of the discussion items that I will read further down on the agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Blaylock. Mr. Keller?
Okay, thanks again to the public. I appreciate all the responses. I know it's not always easy standing up here, so appreciate you taking the time to be up here. And I guess to the board, I hope we can find a way to incorporate some of the comments that the public has for us as, if we can include those in whether it's meeting minutes or a general update of some kind, so they know that we're hearing them and not just standing here smiling. And then I guess with respect to some of the safety, I do agree with Mr. Gogolewski about incorporating in some way, and I know we need to have further discussion about this at a later time. The resource officer reports or some of the information from, I think Mr. Hughes included internal threat assessments in one of the previous updates. So I think I'd like to see some more information on that at a later date. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. Mrs. Blondino?
Thank you. I want to address one thing. I apologize if I seemed like I was making faces at anybody. My husband showed up and I smiled and said hello. So I just want everyone to know that I am trying not to make faces if people are speaking. If someone looks at me, it is habit to acknowledge them. So I apologize. I kind of got the feeling that a lot of people were, they were basically saying, things about teachers. I respect a lot of teachers. My boys went to school here. They had some terrific teachers. I mean, Mrs. Piggott goes down in history as one of the best teachers ever, right? I texted her a couple of years ago and said, thank you again, because I strongly believe that there's a lot of really good teachers. I think one of the things that's being mistaken is that, basically when we were running, like they were saying, education on indoctrination, that is not applied to teachers, it's applied to curriculum. And I do believe that there are a few teachers out there that may have something that they want to teach children that they feel is necessary, that maybe a parent doesn't feel is necessary, maybe a parent wouldn't agree with. Those are the kinds of things that I would be against. I am not against any personal journey of any child, that it's a personal journey, but I don't agree that there are personal journeys that are taken at higher priority than anybody else's personal journeys. I believe that the 14th Amendment should cover all students, and that's how I feel about that. Setting proper examples, I do believe that we need to set proper examples in all cases, including, you know, I don't agree that Hartland is, you know, the best it can be right now. I think that some of the things that, you know, we were told aren't necessarily they're standardized, or we're meeting the criteria of things. I'd like for us to be better. So whatever I do, I want us to be better. And I just appreciate everybody's comments, good or bad. I appreciate that very much, because I feel like it's extremely important to understand what the community wants for their children, because that's the only reason we're here as the students. So I just want to say thank you, and I will try to set, you know, proper examples the best I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blondino. I have a few things. Normally I don't write them down, but I felt necessary to. The first couple would be this past Saturday was a great time. I came out here for the Walk for Warmth here at this building. It's outstanding to see a number of community members throughout Livingston County come here and raise money for people who are struggling to pay their utility bills. So I thought that was great that we opened up our building for that organization. I thought that was great. Saturday also, I was able to attend the Hartland Soup at the All Saints Lutheran Church. I thought that was an outstanding thing. If you're not familiar with that, that's where basically you pay $5 to get in, you have some nice homemade soup or chili, and then groups that are in need of money get up and present. And the group that gets the most votes leaves with that money, including an additional $500, I believe that was donated. So it was a great experience, and it was nice to see actually our Hartland High School Drama Club was the recipient of over $1,000. So I thought that was fantastic. So the next part I am going to read, because I don't want to go off tangent here, but this next request is for my fellow board members. I just feel approved to read. I feel we've made a commitment that when we were elected and took the oath to serve the community of Hartland. I feel that we owe it to the community to make the time to review the material provided and ask questions to be informed before coming to our meetings. I think the time commitment is on us and us alone. I believe most of us sitting here at the board meeting have taken time to do this, and we all have commitments, work, family. I do urge all of you to speak to Mr. Hughes prior to this meeting with your concerns so he can educate you or clear up any misconceptions or concepts you may have. I know I've mentioned that before, but I think it's critical that you reach out to Mr. Hughes. He can reach out to his team and get answers for all of us sitting here. This next part I wasn't going to read, but since it's been hammered home several times about the 3 Rs, I was just going to go for it. I do also urge our fellow board members to remember the 3 Rs here. Reason, respect, and responsibility. I think we owe it to the students of Hartland to behave as role models. I think the last thing our committee wants us to see is the Board of Education behaving in a way that would be acceptable, say, in a classroom. We obviously don't have to agree on everything. Discussion is important, but I also think it's important how we treat each other. I reflect on my 24 years as an educator. I've seen in my class how the focus of a lesson can be distracted by students who want to lead the class off task. Very little education that occurs in that class time, and it's more time is spent managing personal conflict and social drama. And trust me, as an 8th grade teacher, I see it. I'm sure my fellow board members also experience these types of distractions in their professions as well. So I urge all of our board members to think about our focus sitting up here should be one thing, and that should be for the students of Hartland and all students. And again, I say all students. So I hope moving forward that we can show the community that we not only value the 3 Rs that are over here, but we can apply them here at this meeting. I feel we owe it to the community to show them that we can agree or disagree on things, but our top priority will always be the students. So with that, again, I don't normally write things down, but I felt I didn't want to go off on a different tangent. So with that, I am all set. Item 2A, payment of invoices.
I move that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Chief Financial Officer, approves the financial report as of January 31st, 2023, and the payment of invoices totaling $2,619,343.52, and payroll obligations totaling $402,779,065.
Support.
Motion by Mrs. Claybach, support by Mrs. Coleman. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Gogleski,
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw,
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman.
Yep.
Mrs. Claybach.
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Aye.
Mrs. Blondeel,
Yes.
and myself only yes, that motion carries. Item 2B, there are revised bylaws, so we're just gonna go through each one individually. So revised bylaw 0155 committees.
I move that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the board president, adopts revised bylaw 0155 committees as presented and discussed.
Motion by Mrs. Coleman. Support by Mrs. Shaw. So the board, I know you've been provided with the committee bylaw that we are changing. I guess I should say, is there any discussion? But I jumped in first, so if somebody wants to jump in, but obviously as you can see, based on the conversations we had at the last meeting, my understanding came to an agreement to get rid of essentially all the confusion and simply leave it as that top couple lines there talking about committees are formed for information sharing by the administration and convened by superintendent or designee, shall report the committee meetings minutes to all remaining board members. No committee has the authority to make decision for the Board of Education. Committees shall be distributed equally if possible. I was just reading that through the public, just so you're aware of the revisions, but we're gonna get to more clarity on policy later. So is there any discussion?
Mr. Costa, I do have a comment. Looking at one of the last committee meeting minutes, I would encourage that although the committee is not making decisions, it would be good to at least write down any questions that were asked and any answers given as part of the minutes. Because the minutes from the last meeting that I have were just simple statements of what was done. Budgets were presented, and basically that was it. But I would look toward my other fellow board members that are on that committee to ask certain questions, provide or get the provided answers. And it would help me tremendously to understand what they've reviewed and which way I should vote accordingly. So.
Thank you, Mr. Gogleski. I can say that, I'm assuming you're referencing the last finance committee meeting.
Yes. Mhm.
I know that Rachel went over the budget and she explained to us with that super convenient packet, clearly like what each item meant. And I know that all the board members received that same exact packet. That's where I would urge you, just referencing back my comments. Like if you were looking to seek for an answer to understand that better, I would pick up the phone and call Mr. Hughes, and I would hope that he would direct you to Rachel for that, because I would be hard pressed for a board question or comment to take the place of her expertise on something like that. So.
Well, I do want to thank Rachel for getting that information early. You did a great job with that, and I thank you for it. But the point of a committee and having a board member on a committee is to help provide a little bit of guidance. And I'd like to see a little bit more information in the minutes. That's all I'm saying.
Any more discussion?
I would also agree. I think we need a little bit more context in some of these minutes, similar to our own meeting minutes. So.
Okay. Hearing no more discussion. Mr. Gogleski.
Yes.
Ms. Shaw.
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman.
Yes.
Mrs. Claybach.
Yes.
Mr. Keller.
Yes.
Mrs. Blondeel.
Yes.
I myself am a yes, that motion carries. Still on item 2B, revised bylaw 0168.3 committee meetings. And I'm just gonna read it for clarification for the public, because we're getting to where I won't have to do this. Oh, I'm sorry, we need to make a motion, my bad.
Upon the recommendation of the Board of Education, the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the board president, adopts revised bylaw number 0168.3, committee meetings as presented and discussed.
Support.
Motion by Mrs. Shaw, support by Mrs. Clayback. Thanks, Mrs. Coleman, for catching that. So this one is 0168.3 committee meetings. As it stands, we're leaving this with, it says any board committee, whether standing or appointed, ad hoc, which exercises governmental or proprietary authority must comply with open meetings provisions in 0168.1 and 0168.2. So in essence, I know the board can see it, but we're going to get to how the public is going to see these as well. We're removing the fact that these committees don't empower or take action. So with that, discussion. Hearing none. Mr. Gogolewski?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mrs. Claybaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mrs. Blondeel?
Yes.
I myself am a yes. That motion carries. Revised bylaw 0166 agenda.
I move that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the board president, adopts revised bylaw 0166 agenda as presented and discussed.
Motion by Mrs. Coleman, support by Mrs. Shaw. Again, for the public, this is 0166 agenda. In essence, the Board of Education is adding, well, we are voting on adding, the district shall publish the following documents prior to Board of Education meeting. The proposed agenda, draft minutes from the previous months of meeting, financial summary statement, any bylaw, policy changes to discuss or act on. So that last one would be the fact that the public would then get the opportunity to see the bylaw as it stands, to see the suggested changes with lines and items and things crossed out, so I don't have to read it. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to just make a couple comments. Appreciate that we're making steps towards adding additional information for the public. I guess I would like to add for consideration for the board that we would actually only exclude items from the packet that are restricted due to legal matters or confidentiality, so that everything else would just be the same board packet that we get, except for those two items.
I'd like to mimic what he just said. I think that, I mean, is there some reason we wouldn't just post the whole board packet?
I think this is the way that it was presented to us, or the way that after we had discussed it at the last meeting, and it was given to us in the packet, is what we have to vote on now, though. So I don't know if we can make any other changes. The motion was to.
Yeah, the vote.
approve it as-
That's fine. We're not making changes. It's just a comment.
No,
Okay.
I believe just based on the lengthy conversation we had at the last meeting that I thought collectively when I went and wrote up our suggested changes, that we all were in agreement that the financial summary statement, the bylaws, the clearly displaying any changes. Obviously the draft minutes, because they're not they're drafts until we vote on them. I thought that met the expectations of the board. So that's kind of where we sit with this. Again, I know Mr. Hughes has mentioned this multiple times, but correct me if I'm wrong, that obviously after we've got to vote on this, but after the meeting minutes have been approved, so they're official meeting minutes, they're here, the public can come in and sit down and look at them. The public oppose, I mean, I suppose the public could FOIA them, but I know there's a cost involved in that, so I don't know, but is that correct, Mr. Hughes?
Yeah, so in the past, if the public wanted to see the board packet, they could always come in after the board meeting and see the packet, sit down with us, go through it, no problem. Or they could FOIA it and they could get that, up to 5 days after the packet was made. So there was two options. So this kind of would partially avoid that because it would be posted, these four things now would be posted with the meeting agenda as part of the packet. So the public would see these things. These are the things that would appear in general on most board meetings, except for the bylaw policy changes. That's kind of a standalone one that's only coming up because there's lots of conversations in the last few months about this. But those other things would be there.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Any other discussion?
So then I guess I'd like to move that we revise the wording to say the district shall publish all board packet materials in their entirety, except those materials where prohibited by law or protected by confidentiality. Again, this is what I had sent to the team this weekend, so I didn't get any comments, so I guess I'm looking for some feedback on that motion.
I second it.
Well, I think, well, we have a motion currently on the table to approve the revised agenda as it stands. So we've got to make a decision about the revised bylaws that are sitting in front of us. If that motion fails, then what will happen is this will fall off, and then what we'll have to do is we'll have to re-revise, and we'll have to come back at the next meeting. So, because the motion is currently, we're voting on what is sitting in front of us, which is what was.
So, excuse me, but I guess as a point of order, I think we would vote on the amended motion first, and if that doesn't pass, then it would go back to the original move.
Yes, I'd seek out Mr. Hughes for clarification. I think we currently had I mean, I'm trying, so you feel, Mr. Keller, that we should be voting on?
The way I understand Robert's rules is you would first vote on the amendment, and then if that doesn't pass, then it would go back to the original.
I would say that is true, Renee, help me if I need to. Because there's conversation and discussion item on this particular policy, Greg has made a motion to amend what's in front of you. It doesn't necessarily need that discussion item from the past time, like the fact that this is before you today needed that. It's just amending what you have here. So the board should probably vote on adding anything, only the excluded items restricted by legal or confidentiality, as they'll have to read it again, so it gets captured perfectly. You'd have to vote on that. If that passes, then that becomes part of this policy. Then you vote on the policy that is sitting on the table now as brought forward and seconded. So I think that's.
You need to read it again?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. Just
you have
so
to read
Renee
it
can
slowly
get it.
so that Renee can capture the whole thing.
So you're making a motion. to
Yeah, I
amend.
sent an email on it, so hopefully I have it, but, so I move to amend the language to say the district shall publish all board packet materials in their entirety, except those materials where prohibited by law or protected by confidentiality. And that would replace what you had in green on your packet.
Second that.
Motion to amend by Mr. Keller, seconded by Mr. Bogoleski. So now we're voting on the amendment. Mr. Bogoleski?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
I guess I just would like to have had more time to talk about
Oh, I'm
this.
sorry.
No, I'm saying before we sat down here today, it wasn't made clear, I think, to myself and maybe not to the other board members that we were gonna talk about revising what we were voting on today. So I guess in the future, I would just say, if that's what your plan is, I think just make it more clear that that's what you're gonna be, presenting at the table and giving us a heads up that that's what you're gonna be bringing to the table to make changes. So the reason why you want to change what we talked about last time to present the entire packet as opposed to this, and what's the reasoning for that?
Well, again, I know we talked about this last meeting,
Yep.
and maybe I was one of the lone voices in this, but I feel that, we owe it to the public to have everything that we have. Again, we serve the public, and unless it's a legal reason that we can't put it out there, or if there's some confidential matter that cannot be disclosed, I don't think that we should make it more onerous for the public to have to FOIA materials to come here and prepare what they want to talk about. And I think it's also consistent with our fellow boards that have been elected, such as the county commissioners, the Hartland Township.
And I think I would like to probably have some more time to think about it and maybe, talk about it with other board members. So I think right now, my vote is no.
Mrs. Coleman?
Not against it. But, yeah. But I have to see that.
Mrs. Blaylock?
I want to make it very clear that confidentiality does include and should include, and I want to ensure that it's on the record that it includes, for instance, the child support cases that our colleagues have and those types of things. To me, that is not for public consumption, nor is necessarily some personal information that is shared with us. And so I want to be sure that that is something that we all intend to follow, because I take that very seriously. Outside of that, I am supportive of the verbiage.
So is that a yes, Mrs. Blaylock?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mrs. Blandio?
Yes. But I'll have a little discussion. I just feel that, we really need to be transparent. And, as much as you guys are reprimanding us for asking questions and being transparent, it's not theater. It's really getting the community to understand what's going on up here that we're doing, whether you appreciate it or not. It's going to continue to happen. We want to be transparent. We want everyone to know what's going on. So I'm supportive of it, changing the verbiage to what Greg said.
So because I will cast my vote here in just a brief moment. So just to clarify, we're releasing the entire board packet. The verbiage again is, what does it read, Mr. Keller?
The district shall publish all board packet materials in their entirety, except those materials where prohibited by law or protected by confidentiality.
I guess my question, I don't know if you would have that answer, Mr. Keller, or that default to Chuck or the legal firm that we represent, like what would qualify as private? I mean, like a number of things. I know Mrs. Blaylock mentioned, like specifically, we don't want certain obviously private information going out, but like what is deemed private or not private? Like we're talking about the budget. I don't think there's anything to hide in that 20-page document that Rachel shares with us weekly or monthly. My concern would be, I'm just not sure what we're gonna give them, what we aren't. Like I don't know, because you sent that over the weekend and there wasn't a lot of substance to it. And I would like to have more conversation with it.
And
Like,
also, who makes that decision? Who decides what's confidential?
I don't know. That's what I don't know. Like
Right, that's fine.
I don't think the district has anything to hide, Mrs. Blondeel, and for his transparency and questions, like I said, I've encouraged the questions. I think a lot of great conversation has come from some of these ideas. I just don't know what we are gonna keep private because of privacy issues. I
Well,
struggle with that.
anything involving a personal name, anything involving an address or anything like that, I mean, that's pretty basic.
I think we just look at how other districts do it. I think a lot of districts.
Some do,
post their
some do, and
packets, so
some
like,
some
why do they do
don't.
it? I don't think it's as difficult as we're making it.
I mean, like, for example, the check register has a ton of personal information on it. So are we now going back and,
But again, you can FOIA these documents, correct?
I think you're welcome to come in and have a seat and look at them or FOIA, yes.
So it's available for the public, right?
For sure. Again, I don't think the district has anything to hide from this. I just wondering.
So then I guess I'm not sure what the concern might be. Again, I said it over the weekend and just, you would encourage me to call you if I had questions. I would encourage you to do the same. I'm here to answer any questions you might have about it, so.
No, I know, I already spoke to you on Saturday, so, and you indicated you were busy. So for that matter, because I'm not sure what the privacy thing would be, my vote is no, but with that said, it still carries on. So we're adding Mr. Keller's amended to say the district shall. I didn't write it word for word. Yeah, wonderful. Here we go. So voting on that, Mr. Gogolewski,
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw,
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman.
Yep.
Mrs. Claybaugh,
Right.
Mrs. Keller, Mr. Keller, sorry,
Yes.
Mrs. Blondale.
Yes.
Again, I don't think the district has anything to hide as well, so my vote is yes, but I really hesitant as to making sure we don't release things that aren't, so my vote is yes.
Just for clarification, we'll have to get this work done. Chris, I think you and I, when I worked with you and Renee to build the agenda, proposed agenda, we'll have to have that conversation around legality issues, personnel issues, any specific student information issues that might come to the board. So the board's gonna have to trust that Chris and I had that conversation, and we do the best we can to determine what should not be on that packet.
Correct. Item 2C, new hire.
I move that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, offers a probationary teaching contract to Angela Lewis for the 2022-23 school year pending verification of credentials and Public Acts 99, 83, and 189 requirements if applicable.
Motion by Mrs. Claybaugh, support by Mrs. Coleman. Is there any discussion?
I have a question. So is this a replacement of somebody or is this adding? Is this additive?
This is an addition. I know Scott's not here, so I'll try to speak for him. It's an addition at the middle school because we have a number of special ed teachers that are on leave of absences and whatnot. And so we need stability, and we're gonna need teachers next year anyway. So this is trying to cover that gap while we have these leave of absences, knowing that we'll need a teacher anyway next year. So while we can find a special ed teacher, we want to grab them.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Gogolewski,
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw,
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman,
Yes.
Mrs. Claybaugh,
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mrs. Blondale,
Yes.
and myself as a yes. Congratulations.
As Mr. Hughes said, we had quite a challenge in terms of being short of staff and special ed. And as you know, there's a teaching shortage, but in terms of special ed, there is absolutely nobody out there. In fact, when we posted for her position, we didn't get any responses. And so I picked up the phone and I started calling the people I knew. And I got a lot of rejections, but then I came across Angie, who had worked for Hartland schools for about 10 years earlier. I think you left in 2012? 2012 to attend to her family and take care of some business. And so I was just elated. I felt like I won the lottery when she said, yeah, I'm interested. And so I am super, super excited to welcome Angie back to Hartland Schools.
And I'd like to say thank you because you reached out to me and I was reaching out to him almost at the exact same time. So I'm very excited to be back and thank you for an opportunity at our creek this time.
Our pleasure.
Congratulations. Go home, Mrs. Lewis, go home.
Florence, is your team the recipient of her good baked goodies nowadays?
I move that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, offers a probationary teaching contract to Katie Odell for the 2022-23 school year, pending verification of credentials and Public Acts 99, 83, and 189 requirements if applicable.
Support. Motion by Mrs. Coleman, support by Mrs. Claybaugh. Any discussion?
Same question. Is this replacement or additive?
If I remember correctly, guys, this is an ad. We needed some help, and so this is an ad.
This is an ad. So with an ad like this in the middle of the year, were there some events or something, or was it just something that you guys reviewed everybody and said we need some help? Is that how that?
Dottie, you wanna help me?
Yeah.
Come on up.
Okay.
Again, Scott's not here and
Okay.
he's the personnel guru. Everybody thinks I'm supposed to know everything. I don't know everything, just so you know, I don't.
He always knows everything I ask him. He's got me covered. But anyways, so yes, we have grown at Round Elementary. When I started there, we had about 313 students. We have 469 as of count day. So we have been growing. And as we've been growing, our special needs population has grown at a rate also. And we found ourselves in a position where we just didn't have enough staff to make sure we were meeting students' IEPs and interventions. And so I met with Scott and Adrian, and we looked at the numbers of hours and services students were supposed to be receiving, and it was determined that we needed another staff member. So that's how that happened.
Okay.
I'll just stay here, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hearing no more discussion, Mr. Gogolewski,
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw,
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman,
Yes.
Mrs. Claybaugh,
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mrs. Montiel,
Yes.
and myself will be yes, that motion carries. Congratulations.
Also super excited to introduce Katie because like Lawrence, I was looking for somebody who had some special ed credentials and they're very hard to find. And Katie was actually working in Linden and we were able to steal her. So we're very happy. She's doing a fabulous job. She hit the ground running. She had a schedule the first day and a caseload. So welcome, Katie.
And I just wanted to say thank you. It's been wonderful working with everyone at Round so far. It's been an amazing experience coming in, even in the middle of the year. It can be really hectic trying to hit the ground running like that. And everyone has made it a really seamless transition for me. So I've really enjoyed my time so far.
Item 2D, 2022-23 budget amendments.
I recommend that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Chief Financial Officer, approve the budget amendments as presented.
Motion by Mrs. Coleman, support by Mrs. Shaw. Is there any discussion?
I just want to thank Rachel for the lengthy conversation that we had on these items. So thanks for your time and preparation.
The way you simplify it for us to make it more digestible and understandable is really appreciated.
I concur. I think it was nice to be able to have that conversation with you as well, to have a better understanding. Not that I would ever want to enjoy or do your job, but clearly you do it well and you can explain it to someone such as me. So you're doing something right.
I had one quick question. For the committee that reviewed it, were there any questions or things that you felt were answered that you were kind of swaying on, you know, or?
I can tell you, I personally, nothing jumped out at me when I was comfortable with everything she presented, as well as our fund balance, which at the end of the day, that's critical for our school district. So everything to me looked great.
I think there were some questions on some of the specifics of some of the overages and under, budget items that we were coming in under, and she was able to explain in specific, along with the the definition page, but give a lot more context to perhaps some of the things happening in our childcare arena or some of the things happening in arenas that aren't necessarily front and forward to us all of the time. So I was very appreciative of that and going through, I mean, she went line item by line item to make sure that we were comfortable with it. And then did also discuss how our funding comes in from the state, the need to rebudget, which for me was a rather like enlightening process to understand why we do it more than once. So that we can, just as our funds flow coming in.
And again, thank you for getting that information to us. Really, that's great.
We are hearing no more discussion. Mr. Gogolski,
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw,
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman.
Yep.
Mrs. Blaylock,
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mrs. Mondeel,
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. That motion carries.
I do want to thank Rachel, like, she is so amazing, she is so knowledgeable about the process. And as a thank you also to the board members that reached out and had conversation with Rachel, because you'll see the end of the year amendment, right? The one that actually determines where do we end up. We'll have to do amendment, the first meeting of June, and close out the budget and adopt a new budget on the second weekend of, or the second meeting of June.
Both
So-
of those, both the amendment and the revise, the initial budget for the 2024 year, I can't believe I'm saying that out loud, will come at that second meeting in June.
And the worst thing about that is we may not even have a budget number from the state of Michigan, as I said earlier, which is crazy, but the law says we have to adopt a budget anyway. It is what it is, so. Thank you, Rachel.
Item 3A, revised policies 9150 school visitors and 4120.09 volunteers.
This came up a couple of meetings ago and just wanted to add additional context to those two policies. So for the 9150, which is school visitors, I would like to actually suggest that adding in specifics on the guardrails of sex offenders on school property. The law indicates they're only allowed to transport their child to and from school, attend an event that their child is actually participating in, and participating in a parent-teacher conference. And I would also like to keep the verbiage surrounding the need for them to be escorted at all times while in a building. In addition, that kind of leads me into the second one, which is the volunteer policy, which is 4120.09, ensuring we have limitations for people with a criminal history to participate as a volunteer, and that includes sex offenders or any other additional criminal history. And that was my request.
Thank you, Mrs. Blaylock. I know you emailed the board your suggestions, and I've got them here in front of me. I didn't print them out, but assuming everybody else on the board did look at them. I'm not opposed to adding these. Obviously, we all want our kids to be safe. And the last meeting when we went through this, we were in a dilemma where we had to vote on it, make sure we were able to update it. And I think these are great additions to it. I think it just kind of solidifies that we're going to try to at least put in place language that would deter things. So I appreciate you bringing it to us. So I'm hoping the board members have a chance to look at it.
And just for the knowledge of the public, there are some of us who are writing to our legislators in lack of support for this new law that has been passed, allowing sex offenders, I guess, more freedom. They don't necessarily have to register with the school system any longer, which is very disrupting and disturbing to me. And so we're gonna kind of try and tackle it from a couple of different angles to try and ensure that they understand how we feel on ground level.
And I was gonna say, I mean, I've seen a lot of head nodding, which is great. So if I don't hear from any of the board members, I'm just gonna take Mrs. Glaybock's language as is and just add it to the next agenda unless you see there's something that is out of line. But obviously we have time to talk before the next meeting.
I just want to thank you, Megan, for kind of spearheading that. Very important point, very important bylaw revision here. So thank you.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, I know Megan's put a lot of work into this too, and I've had some conversations with her that I just want to put in there, like the sex offenders are not allowed, because I don't want it to be inviting. I know that we're putting it in here so that we don't face any kind of like lawsuits in case something happens. I prefer that we say, no, they're not allowed, so that I'd rather have a lawsuit against us for something like that than a lawsuit happening, you know, because something happened to a child. So my stance is that, I mean, I guess, you know, if we can add that in there, as the first line item is that, you know, our preference would be to not have you on campus. And then, you know, go into what the, I just don't know anybody's gonna look this up and be like, oh, here's what I have to do. I mean, so it's really kind of.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you. I don't think, unfortunately, I mean, I was sex offenders gonna take the time because their school district volunteer policy, but I think having the language that Mrs. Glaylock had is in place. So, but are you suggesting that we have that, they're not welcome at all? Because I think Mr. Hughes didn't we talk at length at the last meeting that we have to be careful about putting in language that is not legal or enforceable, I guess.
I think it's not enforceable, and so there's no sense in having it, but if somebody doesn't follow board policy, and the fact that you're right, who's gonna stop and go, knock, knock, is there a policy? What do I gotta do? But if it's found that one of these people are sitting over here in an event and it's reported to us, now we at least have something that we can take action on and say, hey, you didn't tell us, in the future, you cannot come on campus unless you're escorted and blah, 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 right? So I think that's the key.
I think Michelle had sent an email with some verbiage indicating sex offenders are not allowed on school premise without permission. I think the permission component in there.
We could add that as well.
Yeah. Michelle, do you have that? Send.
Yeah, I can forward it to you. Yeah, I don't want to like leave your own emails at the
Okay.
moment, but
If
yeah.
you get a chance, can you send it to myself and Renee so we can incorporate it in there?
Yes, yes.
That's not it. There's no just more discussion. Item 3B, administrative contract renewals for discussion. Mr. Hughes.
Yeah, it's that time of year in our administrative contracts. Our administrators work extremely hard, and in their contracts, it calls for renewal yearly to extend the contract. So this would extend the contract to 2025. Yeah, 25, 26, 25, 26. And what I am asking to put in the contract as well as part of the discussion item is a guaranteed 2% increase each of the next 3 years of their contracts. So it's a 2-2-2, and it extends them out and keeps them working in Hartland and doing the jobs that they're doing with our children and our staff.
Is that 2% in line with a lot of our other?
It is in line, however, there are some that are better, and 2% isn't perfect, but in the contract, it also stipulates that there's a formula, if you recall, and the new board members may not remember that. There's a formula based on student increase as well as, or a formula increase, right, for FTE per child and number of students. And so that formula comes out, and what we would do, as we always do, is this year we implemented the formula at 2% in the fall instead of the whole number that it would have come out to, just to be consistent and not over the top. So 2%, we would look at the formula in the fall and make sure that we're in line with a number that was appropriate, and talk with finance at the time and personnel probably like we normally do, to say, here's what we're going to add as the formula kicks in within the contract.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. I agree with you. I think we have a phenomenal set of administrators, and I'd hate for one of them to jump ship to some surrounding district if we can't follow through on a contract of 2% raise. Any more discussion?
Yeah, can I ask you exactly who is affected by this when you say administration?
So if you go to the people affected by this is board policy 1410. Board policy 1410 is central office staff, not including me. I'm not included in this. Dave Minsker, Scott Van Apps, Rachel Boyce, Carol Hayes over at Community Ed, Scott Usher in technology. All of the administrators basically you see out here, all of our principals, assistant principals, and JD, our athletic director, Matt, yep, he's back there. Matt's covered. So everybody covered in 1410 If you pull that language, you'll see there is a graph there, and it's very transparent on what they're paid, and that these are the contracted people under this policy.
Does this fall in line with, does this correlate to teachers' raises?
The teachers have a 5, you have to help me here, 5 to maybe a 3 in that final year if we're at 20% fund balance. So this year, we added an additional 1% in the fall to kind of make up for the fact that the administrators didn't get that. And I was going to ask for a 2-2-2, and then that formula we can even out so that it evens out with that number over time. And I'd be happy to sit down and show you the numbers, you know, but yeah, we believe this is a good deal. This is the right thing to do, knowing that we have that formula to play with.
I have a question. So, as we know, inflation is through the roof right now. 2%, that is only halfway there, right? Just even for this year. Can we amend something and not have 2-2-2 and maybe look at the budget? I mean, if we're looking at just round numbers, I have no idea, but it's just $3 million in salaries per year. You know, I don't know exactly what they are because I haven't been able to get into all that detail yet, but round numbers, you know, is it $30,000? Is it 300,000? Like what does an extra percent this year do? I'd like to see that number. Do you have it?
You might even know it off the.
I'm not gonna answer that in public because I think I know it, but I.
Yeah.
check
You wanna put it on record? You can follow up. I just.
Yes, I can follow up with you, but I, you know, kind of answering your kind of, if I may, on your inflationary comment, that's kind of the purpose of the formula. It's dependent on our increase in state aid. There's a calculation done and the formula is a percentage based on that increase. So essentially, as our revenue budget increases, if it's a large increase, then that formula is a bigger number. And so that's how that kind of comes into play when applying that against salaries, like you're mentioning.
Okay, but that's the formula is the incoming, right? Like the revenue. It's not necessarily the output formula, or is there a formula that?
It's calculated based on the revenue coming in.
Okay.
That formula, salary increase is calculated based on the revenue coming in.
Okay, so it's just all relative. I get it. It's not really a huge, deep, in-depth formula. It's just if you have an extra something.
And what this contract does, when I say 2-2-2, is it guarantees all the administrators a 2% July 1st, and then whatever the formula is in the fall. So if the formula in the fall generates, you know, a 2%, then potentially it could be a 4% for the year. So then that's retroactive back to July 1st based on the contract. So technically they could get, you know, they're guaranteed 2% is the key. Guaranteed 2%, we look at the formula in the fall, and then we add what's an appropriate number there. And we have that conversation.
Okay, I'd still like to know if we went in 3 and then, you know, because I know in our industry, it's tough, but you know, to retain good people and to make them, you know, because it's been tougher than ever, right, to make things work. And so that's why it's important to let them know that, you know, they're valued, and sometimes money does that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blondale.
My only concern is that the pace of administrative pay raises does not exceed that of teachers. So
We've tried to keep that very consistent.
okay. So I guess what I'm asking is, does this exceed the pay raise that teachers are getting?
This year, the administrators got a total of 3%. 3%. Next year, they would get 2%, and then the formula in the fall. The teachers next year get 5% guaranteed in their contract, okay? So if the fall generates enough to do a 3%, we could do 5% for the administrators next year. The following year, the teachers get 2%. That's why I'm asking for the 2% for a guarantee. And the following year, the teachers could earn up to 3% if we're at 20% fund balance. Which again, a 2% puts them in line with that 3% at least, and the formula could kick in and get the extra percent. So yes, I believe this is in line with what the teachers are doing. Awful close.
Do the teachers get an opportunity to evaluate the administrator?
don't.
I know in
think
your,
teachers wanna evaluate their administrators personally, but
Well, in your, did you know summary from the 27th, I think the number one reason that was cited for teacher satisfaction was effective leadership by the administration. So I'm just wondering how we, as a district, address that.
we do a staff survey. Scott Van Epps does it in the spring. We've done it 2 years in a row. We're committed to doing it again. So the teachers and all the staff in the district get a chance to evaluate the whole district, including the board. And we get data on that, how they're feeling about us, how they're feeling about the job we're doing, how they feel the district's doing. And you guys that have sat on the board have seen that in years past. So we do have a process for gathering that input.
Any more discussion? There's not a 2% of the board members is there. 2%, 0. This is just a joke. Joking. I don't want
You
to
could
die.
afford your $30 meeting.
I don't want it. I don't want to dime. So, okay, there's no more discussion. Item 3C, something exciting, the out of country trip, summer 2024.
Yes, where's my friend? Kate is, oh, there they are. Come on up. So just to put it in context for the new board members, we do have policy that allows for out of country trips based on board approval. Now, I will tell you, the ladies are here today. They'll introduce themselves to explain what this trip is. And the reason why it's coming to you so early is that they have to get information to their parents so the parents can sign up and start making payments towards making sure they can afford to send their child away on this abroad trip with our great friends here that are going to introduce themselves. So only the board can approve out-of-country trips. I will say that normally what happens in these is that the board approves out-of-country trips based on the presentation and the information with a caveat. We ask them to share with the parents to ensure that there's an insurance package, that if things are not going well in that location at the time in which they're going to go, that the board can say, no, 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 we want you not to do that. Right? So, Amy and Teresa, you guys want to introduce yourselves and talk about it?
Sure. Good evening. I'm Amy Zabo. I am in the World Languages Department at the high school. This is my colleague Teresa Smith. She teaches Spanish in the middle school. I come to you today very excited and enthusiastic about reopening international travel for Hartland High School. It was a thing. We were doing great with it, but unfortunately, we know we have some world events that really put the damper on that. And so now that the tide is changing, looking forward to reinstating this important piece, I feel, of the curriculum, this extra. So I'm thanking Mr. Hughes. I think in advance he gave you all my proposal, and hopefully you'll have some time to look over it. So to tell you about me, I'm getting ready. I think I'm in my 18th year of teaching. Teresa?
I think 20, but Hartland maybe 13.
Yeah, and so
World.
And so we have traveled together. I have traveled twice representing Hartland, once to Paris with our French program, and then once as the lead myself. We went to Costa Rica in 2019. We did have a trip scheduled for, I think it was 2021 to go to Peru. It was sold out. We were excited. We had over 48 students. It sold out in an hour. So it was devastating when we did push it ahead a year, and then we had to cancel again just because of COVID restrictions. So now I'm presenting to you a trip to travel to Panama in the summer of 2024. And I once again chose EF Tours as our tour company. That's who I traveled with to Paris and to Costa Rica. And I was so pleased with how thorough they were, how well thought out things were, the processes and procedures, and honestly, how comfortable I felt as a leader with the support, not just out of country, but in country as we're making preparations to leave. They really give you all kinds of tools to make sure you have all your bases are covered. So I appreciate their knowledge and expertise in this area. I also appreciate their number one concern is safety. So they would never send students to an area that is unsafe. And so I think what I included in your package was just the current State Department travel recommendation to Panama, and it currently is a level 2. Unfortunately, Peru is a level 3, and so that is off of the traveling books for now until that can be, figured out in that country. So we're excited to maybe make Panama our destination. As far as safety is concerned, what I loved about EF is they have, as your packet will tell you on page 3, it literally is a 24/7 support system. We can attest when we were in Costa Rica, you never know what's going to happen. So who knew there was going to be a transportation strike?
That's right.
All the truckers decided to blockade the main thoroughfare. We were supposed to go whitewater rafting. It was like the end of our trip.
It's a real education.
This was real life. And so I'm watching the news. I'm calling, or am I watching it right? I'm calling my tour guide. Am I seeing this correctly?
Yeah, he was great.
And EF was on it. We came up with a plan within hours, and the kids loved it. They went to the mall, so.
And it was the end of the trip. They were ready for a whole
Yeah,
day.
but the idea is they're not gonna leave us stranded. There always is somebody ready to come to bat and help us come up with a plan B. So that's what I appreciated so much. And that I also was part of the conversation. I think that was a big comfort, especially as I'm representing all of you and our school. So I didn't want to be told. I wanted to be a part of the conversation. I think that's what really impressed me about the company, is that we had some dialogue and we came up with our best solution for our group. Also, as far as safety, I only feel comfortable going with trusted travelers and people that work for Hartland schools. So this is not a chaperone by parent event. I need people who know what Hartland's about, what I'm about, and what our focus is. When we travel with students, it's about the learning, it's about the curriculum. This is a curriculum-driven program. So we have requirements for students to travel. We want you to have 3 years of language experience. So it's not, you can provide a credit card and you go. That's what you do with Travelocity. With me and with my group, you need to have 3 years in the language program. So you're showing that dedication, and then you're eligible to go. And that really does make a difference. It gets kids excited about our language program because they know they can now take their knowledge and make that, apply it to a real life situation. And that has really been, and the maturity level, of course.
And they're that click older, yeah.
Yeah, that helps a lot too, that they have that maturity level now. And so honestly, in Paris and even in Costa Rica, there's not discipline. It's more like, go to bed. We're gonna have at 7, they're just excited, they're ready to go, and they're ready to go.
They're great.
And so that's what I want to deal with. You need to sleep,
I think what Dan Aldrin said, he's like, I can't believe we took 40 kids to Costa Rica. And it was like,
and there
no
were
problems.
and
Yeah.
that's a testament also to
Their
our
community.
kids, that they really understood what a privilege it was, and they represented Hartland. We had so many compliments about the way our students behave, and I'm
In our
ready to show Panama that Heartland Eagles are incredible, and we're ready to show again how we behave and how well we can learn and just absorb this experience. So why Panama? So to get our feet wet again, what I decided will be best for us is to go to a place. Well, number one, it's one of the 7 modern marvels of the world, the Panama Canal. Number 2, when I looked at itineraries, I felt that this itinerary was unique. It's the 8-day itinerary because there's one stay. Now, you don't see it in your particular packet, but we aren't staying in different hotels this time. I felt for us to get back into it, first time after COVID, I wanted us to stay in one place and then do day trips. I thought that was a good way to get everybody acclimated. And I thought that that would be also kind of maybe have you all a little more assured of the fact that we're always coming back to home base. Where in the past, we were kind of hopping around, which was amazing. But this one time, I wanted it to be just a little bit more calm on that end. You do see in your packet, there was an optional extension. We're not going to go to Colombia. That's not what I want to do. So we're going to stay in Panama, and what are we going to do? We're going to experience the culture. We're going to have amazing adventures in the rainforest. We're going to have cultural exchanges with students there. We're going to learn about the indigenous people. We're going to speak some Spanish. We're going to eat the food. We're going to see, I mean, for those who are, mechanically inclined, they're going to see the Panama Canal. Also to tell you, I have been to Panama twice myself. I was there as a student and also as a parent. I took my family there. So I have been to Panama, and I'm comfortable that this will be a great trip for the kids as well. Do I know every single spot that we're going to be visiting? No, I'm excited because I want to see those places too. So I've been to the canal twice. I know what that's about. I've been to the city, but I'm excited to bring the kids there. So I want to kind of give you that extra assurance that I have traveled as well to Panama in the past. Lastly, just a few things is the price. And there's a cost to this, of course. And it's nothing that the school needs to pay for. This is a choice for students and their families. And currently the price, as I've spoken with our representative, is $3,439. And that is, when looking at all the other itineraries that are reaching the $4,000 mark, I couldn't even swallow. I couldn't even, I didn't want to present that to you, so I thought that with the way the prices are currently, that it's not going to be doable for everybody. And it pains me that it's exclusive in that regard. However,
We've had a lot of kids do a lot of work though. We've
Yeah.
had some, I think for Costa Rica, we had a couple of kids work their way and pay their own way.
Yes.
Because their families couldn't.
So there's ways to fundraise. Now, I'm hoping that we'll get a parent or two that are going to be so enthusiastic about that and maybe want to help the kids that enroll fundraise and bring that cost down. I think that'd be fantastic. I don't spearhead that myself. I'm spearheading making sure we have everything in our ducks in a row. But I'm hoping to find a family or a couple parents who would love to do that. Also, what EF has done to help make things affordable. We're all familiar with that GoFundMe idea. So EF has now actually has that type of a page for the students. So you can have this GoFundMe EF page. So you can say, it's my birthday, donate here. It's Christmas, donate here. It's a special holiday, donate here. So I thought that was really unique and special, that could help kids afford this trip. And it's not just all on, in their lap to do that. In closing, I also want to talk a little bit about the insurance. So EF offers $50 million in general liability policy. And so if something were to occur, it is not Hartland Schools that is I want to say on the hook, I hate to say that, but it's EF that's the one that will be taking their insurance policy will cover anything. I never would want a catastrophe to happen, and I'm happy to say that with the 2 tours I've gone with here and 2 tours I did with Milford High School, we just had a great time. Kids get sick, yes.
We've had that.
Mm-hmm.
Took them to the clinic. That's my job.
That's her. So, so those things happen, but
But we're, a lot of us are moms too.
yeah,
And we
but
had a
EF helps
first
us
aider, yeah.
manage that. And so it doesn't turn into just a big catastrophe that stops what our purpose is, or our goal is that learning piece. So, that was what I really love about EF, like, when they say they have your back, it's not just your back, like, you're covered in a bubble. And they will be there, they will get there, they will medevac you, they will get you in a hospital, they'll do whatever it takes, they'll bring a family, they'll bring a parent down to retrieve their child, like all kinds of things. There's nothing too much to make sure that everybody is safe, secure, and covered. So that's what I really appreciate about this. So I humbly ask for your consideration and approval, enthusiastic approval, to approve this trip. And also, I did want to ask a favor. Typically, as Mr. Hughes knows, the kids are already buzzing. They know I'm talking to you. So typically what I like to do is hold a parent informational meeting while the board is discussing it. What I love about EF is I can have this meeting and get the information out to parents and have them register their child on this trip. And if the board decides that at this time, it's not what you want for us, then any monies, deposits, anything that parents have put down to secure a place for their child is refunded 100% complete. So, but I use the word urgency because I want parents to have more than a year
Time to pay.
And many choose to pay on some type of a monthly plan. And so I think that's fair, and I want to give the opportunity to do so. So I would ask if you would agree, it'd be all right if I could please hold an informational meeting within the next week or two, just to get the parents information, start talking about it, get that interest there. But as Mr. Hughes mentioned, letting them know that if our board decides this is not our time, it's not the time right now, there's something that they need more information and things get pulled, that everything will be refunded, and then we'll come up with something or another time, or maybe never, I don't know. So
Before the board responds to that, normally the board says, yeah, have the informational meeting and we'll decide at the next meeting. So that's pretty standard. I did this for many years, as you all know. So that's normally how it's done, because you still have the ability at the next meeting to not take action on this. So
right.
I think it is incumbent of them to start having this conversation, making sure that if a year and a half from now, when you're ready to go on your trip and things aren't good in Panama,
We don't know.
the board says, hey, we're not comfortable sending that trip out. So you'll have to give us a heads up again as it gets closer, to remind us that you're making sure kids have the insurance and whatnot, or at least saying, hey, you better consider this. Okay?
100%. And then, if you wouldn't mind, not only was Teresa one of my valued chaperones,
Yeah.
but she is also a parent of a student that traveled with us to Costa Rica. And I think that speaks volumes that,
Let me chat about that.
could you have just like a minute to
Just-
talk about
yeah,
it? Just
for
so you can,
sure.
hear, like a parent perspective?
Yes, for sure. My husband and I value that for our middle daughter. And so she went to the Costa Rica trip with us. And as a parent, some of the elements that I liked the most were the fact that each of the teachers from Hartland that was on the trip, we each had a family of about 5 or 6 kids that we really got to know and did some kind of get to know you, really bond with you before the trip. And we really, stuck to those families. They were allowed to talk to any of the kids, obviously, but for check-ins and for all sorts of those things that was there. Also, I loved, from a Girl Scout leader perspective, I appreciated how organized it was and how the kids didn't have a lot of downtime. It's like, now we're gonna go to the rainforest and now this restaurant just happens to be ready for us for lunch. And then we're gonna go over here. And the amount of education, and they were able to use some of their Spanish, but it was in kind of this, not quite sheltered way, but it was in a way that they were very much ushered from place to place, you know, with a native Costa Rican who got to know all of our kids' names, and he was studying biology, and he could talk to the kids about all the different kinds of plants and animals. He could speak English, he could speak Spanish, and, you know, and he would ask us, how much Spanish do you want me to use with this? And how much English do you want me to use with this? And went to plantation. So I just really, you know, it was fun for me to watch my middle kid, you know, the traditionally ignored middle child, to watch her kind of experience those things. But there wasn't a lot of like downtime where the kids were gonna goof off. We had fun at the beach, however. And the kids got to learn, if you leave your sandwich on the ground, the monkey will eat it, and shame on you. So yeah, we learned some lessons that way. But the neat part too, as a parent, is all the kids had the WhatsApp that I know a lot of people use internationally. We had a closed Facebook group where we post a lot of photos to parents to kind of give them that reassurance. We encourage them to kind of separate a little bit, like don't text your mom and dad all the time, like let's have a time. And so they did some of that, but some of those kind of things were in place that really made us feel good. And I really appreciated the group of teachers that Amy recruited, because everyone had a different skill. We had a really good first aider, we had a criminal justice guy, we had a biology guy, and I really liked the variety of talent that she chose. And I think we got the same group of talent, hopefully, for this trip. So,
All right, so let's wrap it up and say, board, does anybody have a problem with them starting to share this information?
No.
No, I think it's fantastic.
No. Can I just ask something real quick too? I imagine any student that takes 3 years of language is probably academically pretty solid, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's.
And then the growth within the 8 or 10 days, the trip, they come back a different person.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to bring back new people.
And we learned how to deal with a bug.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies.
Item 4A, future meetings. I have March 13th, 2023, regular meeting held at 6:30 here in the boardroom. Also April 10th, 2023, regular meeting, 6:30 here in the boardroom. 4B, informational items. Anybody have any? I do not.
I had a follow-up comment that I wanted to make. Today, there was several people talking about safety. I talked to Chuck for a little length about safety today. I think safety should be a priority. I was starting to look around at like some of the bonds that we can get, or like some things we can do as a district. I think I ran across something that, you know, if we submit for funding, you know, they can pay for resource officers for 3 years. I think, you know, I'd like to look into that. And also there's opportunities that, you know, I stopped talking about it, but I should talk about it more. 600,000 children disappear from the United States every year, and nobody talks about it. It's an epidemic. We don't do anything in our school district to teach the children how to not become victims of trafficking or fall prey to things like that. And I really think that we owe them a little bit more training and things like that. So I think safety needs to be on next month's agenda. We can talk about that further, but it's just necessary. So thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Blondie. Feel free to reach out to Mr. Hughes or myself, whatever you're envisioning for the next meeting.
Okay.
More? With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.